Hello, guys and gals, and welcome. Welcome. So today we have, well, actually, we had this yesterday, but we weren't really sure exactly what to think of these, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to make a video on them, but we're going to make a video on them today. So in the data mine, or the patch, there are all these recipes. Each one of the recipes uses a specific northern, eastern, deep, southern, etc., and they're all very specific recipes. They seem to be designed around magical items only, so not rares, not uniques, etc. There do seem to be a couple in here that seem to be designed around uniques, and most of them seem to be adding on negative resistance onto things. Like, for instance, you can add negative resistance onto a mystical grand charm, basically taking an existing magical charm and then using this recipe, which is a perfect diamond, a mal, a northern world stone, and that of course allows you to basically create the new negative res version of that, which is actually really powerful because you could have, say, like a plus 145 life skiller, or you could have a really good max damage AR charm with some life on it, and then you could put this on there and add an additional magic resistance or fire resistance or so forth and so on. This is going to make a really interesting change in the way that the game functions, because people are going to be hunting for these. They're going to be trying to craft these, and they're going to try and get like the optimal versions of them. Obviously, there's a different version for every single element. So the mystical seems to be the magic. The breaching seems to be the physical. The incendiary, obviously, is the fire. The magnetic seems to be the lightning, and of course the Galid is the cold, and then of course we have the virulent, which is the poison, and I think that's pretty much it. Obviously there's going to be some really good ones for this. Off the top of my head, because it's magic items, there are some very good magic items in the game. Most notably things like magical, like +3 skill, 20% IAS gloves. So that's going to be a recipe that people are probably going to want to use a lot because, like, for instance, if you're a lightning Javazon, and you want to get yourself a pair of 320s, and then you put the magnetic recipe on there to roll it to -3% lightning res. Now you have a pair of 320s that has -3% lightning res, and now it's even more best in slot than what you were currently using. There's also amulet recipes. So for instance, those really nice amulets like the one I used on my paladin last season, which was the I think it was Prismatic of Life Everlasting, which is the 25 all res and like a 30 all res and then 25 DR, so like physical damage reduction. You could get negative res on that one as well. You could also get negative res on the +3 skills with like faster cast and things like that. This is going to really bring a lot of the blue items into the mix, because those blue items, which already had a foothold in essentially being some of the best equipment in the game, are now going to be even better. So you're going to be able to take some of those amazing blue items that can work their way into just about any build and make them even better. Keeping in mind, like, for instance, a really nice jeweler's armor. So, like, if you had a JMod armor that you would want to put like 4 facets in, which is actually a pretty common build for a lot of like things that need large amounts of negative res and large amounts of positive skill damage, you could potentially get even more negative res by taking that JMod armor, jeweler's mod of deflecting, or jeweler's mod of simplicity, or jeweler's mod of blah blah blah. I call them all JMod, so get on my case about it, sure. But basically, any of those armors that you're going to try and get the 4 sockets on with some other beneficial effect, now you can get another negative resistance on that armor as well, which makes those JMod armors even more powerful. And it's like this across the board, because there are some really good blue items in the game, and there's going to be like just amazing crafts. Now, obviously, this has some connotations. The connotations are, number one, that these Northern Worldstone shards are going to be a trade currency, without a doubt. So whenever you find these Northern Worldstone shards, the Eastern Worldstone shards, the Deep Worldstone shards, the Southern Worldstone shards, and so forth and so on, whenever you find these things are literally going to be currency in this season. Now, of course, how do you rank them as currency? Well, in general, you're going to rank them the same way that you would rank basically any of the elements, right? So if we were to do the elements in order, and you were to say which one's the best element, which one's the worst element, right? Let's start with the worst. The worst element is by far usually poison, usually followed by fire, which then leads to lightning, which then leads to, well, we can probably put cold in between lightning and fire. And then, this is debatable. You could switch and swap these two right here. And then finally, there's usually magic at the top, which is specific to, like Hammerdins and like Bone Necromancers and stuff. In this particular case, this is going to get shaken up a little bit. I'm pretty sure Poison's still going to be at the bottom. I mean, I'm sorry, Poison, but you're probably still going to be at the bottom. The Warlock does have some really good fire skills, which is probably going to bring fire into the limelight this season. So we can probably take fire and push this up to about here. Lightning is going to, and cold are going to take a back seat because unfortunately the Warlock doesn't have any lightning or fire build, or lightning or cold builds really. You could potentially come up with some interesting ones, like maybe using Rift and like Cleave or something, or coming up with some interesting ideas. There is a Consume that actually provides negative cold resistance, and there is a Consume that provides negative lightning resistance. I did my testing yesterday, and that is of course Torque Ice Fist. So if you eat Torque Ice Fist, he gives you negative 45% enemy cold. And if you eat Brem Spark Fist, he gives you negative, like I think it's like 50% enemy lightning. But for the most part, like there's really not a lot of builds that come with cold and lightning. Yes, there will still be characters that are using cold and lightning, and of course there's always going to be those standby sorceresses that play cold. So cold will have some usefulness, especially with the Sunder Charms. Like for instance, the bot's always trying to buy the Sunder Charms. Good luck this season because the Sunder Charms are extremely rare. Fire and magic are probably going to be the most expensive this season because fire and magic are two elements that are most prevalent on the new character. And then of course we also have physical. Now physical was usually back here between cold and poison. It was usually above poison, but it was pretty low. This season, with all the additional resistance negatives that they're offering, like the really good sword that offers permanent curse, the fact that you can like tame a beast that has the cursed modifier, there's going to be a lot of amplified damage just floating around this season, and I have a feeling that the physical Sunder is probably going to find its way a lot higher in the list this season. So I would probably say that the physical fire and magic are going to be the highest, like as far as value goes, and the lightning, cold, and poison are going to be the backseat ones, which means that if we look at the list, you can clearly see that the fire is the deep Worldstone Shard and the Io Rune, as well as the Perfect Ruby. So these are going to be like main items in the trade market for this season. According, like, and I say this, but like, we don't know whether these recipes are going to be enabled for ladder or not. All we know is that they're in the data mine. So keeping that in mind, we're still going to take a look at it anyway. We have the Northern Worldstone, the Pul Rune, and the Perfect Amethyst. So Perfect Amethysts are going to become even more valuable than they already are because people, of course, use those to craft their caster amulets. And so now we have a competing recipe that is also going to be building up negative enemy physical resistance through basically your charms and whatnot. If you keep this in mind, I mean, taking a regular character into account, I mean, of course, you have like, most people have, like usually around 8 Grand Charms times 3 is 24%, and then you usually have like another 8 Small Charms times 1, which is of course 8 plus the original 24, and you're looking at like 32% negative physical resistance, which I would not shirk. That is actually extremely massive, because if you think about it, a Sunder Charm can break a monster down to 95. So if you break a monster down to 95 and then apply 32% to that, that means the monster's at 63. And then if you amp them, then they go down even lower. The physical builds this season could be absolutely insane. And like the Northern Worldstone Shard, the Pul, and the Perfect Amethyst are going to be part of creating those. And you're going to need a lot. I mean, as an example, assuming that you have 8 Grand Charms plus 8 Small Charms, and then maybe even you do like another couple items, like let's say you do a pair of gloves, so you can do at least like +1 more, and maybe you do like a really nice amulet or circlet, so another +1. So you're looking at somewhere around like 18 of these crafts, which means that a full character gear out would need 18 Northern Worldstone shards, 18 pole runes, and 18 perfect amethysts, which is going to really push the market as far as like the value of those things. So when you find a Northern Worldstone shard, or when you find these gems, I mean, honestly, at this point, I would be picking up every gem. I mean, literally every gem. Chips, flaweds, like the whole 9 yards. Regulars, flawlesses, all of them. Pick up all of them. There's no reason not to, because they added the gem storage, so pick them all up, and you're going to start using them for trade currency, because I can almost guarantee the perfect amethyst and the perfect ruby are going up like crazy. And then we have the magic ones, which is the mystical. The mystical is perfect diamond, so perfect diamond for the first time actually has a really good recipe. And then the Malrune, and then the Northern Worldstone shard. So we can pretty much say that the Northern Worldstone shard, the Deep Worldstone shard, and the Northern Worldstone shard is the same one for both physical and magical, so that one's going to be even more valuable. That's actually kind of crazy. Sounds to me like if we were to rank these right now by the shards themselves, I would definitely vote that the Northern Worldstone shard is going to be the most valuable, so it's going to be number 1. Followed up very quickly by the Northern to the Deep. So I would definitely say that number 2 is most likely going to be the Deep Worldstone shard. And then after that, it's really like anybody's guess. The poison is most definitely going to be dead last, though. So we've got, 5 shards? So number 3, number 4, number 5. So I would definitely put the Western Worldstone shard at the bottom of this list as far as value goes, which leaves the cold and the lightning. Now, that's kind of a hard one. There are some really good lightning builds in the game, and sorceresses are really popular early on, especially because of their cold damage. But it's going to be difficult to get access to the Sunders this season, because they made the Sunders far more rare. So I don't know if these two are going to like flip-flop or switch places, but I'm going to take a guess, and I'm going to say that the Southern Worldstone shard is probably going to be just under, and then the Eastern Worldstone shard. Dang. Now, there's a couple more little things that you've got to take into consideration. So Northern, Southern, Eastern, blah, 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 blah. These are actually acts, okay? So each one of these is actually a representation of an act that you can terrorize. Certain acts are going to have a higher value just simply because of what acts that they can terrorize, which is going to lead toward specific values also affecting this. So besides the elemental alignment of these specific things, there's also the acts that they're capable of terrorizing for either, farming loot, or for instance for going into the games to like your favorite act or something along those lines. So let's go ahead and take a look real quick at the Worldstone shards. I do have some of them already. We actually ran a full game one time. So we have the Act 1 is right here. Eastern is the Act 2 one. Southern Worldstone shard is Act 3. Deep Worldstone shard is Act 4. And I believe it's Northern. So the one that's probably going to be the most expensive is the Act 5 one, is what it looks like. And I do believe that the Western one is Act 1. So it looks like the Western one is going to be the cheapest, but this is also the one that spawns like TZ Andy, right? I did hear that they were messing around with TZ Andy's drop table, so TZ Andy might not be the best place to farm anymore. Another thing is that each one of these is going to terrorize the act boss of that specific zone. So obviously, Act 1 would be Andariel, Act 2 would be, Duriel, Act 3 would be Mephisto, Act 4 is Diablo, and Act 5 is Baal, right? Well, these statues, which are the Talix statues, come from specific ones of these as well. And so that's also going to affect things. Because, like, for instance, if the specific statues, I think Duriel is going to end up being the rarest. The Act 2 one might be worth a little bit more, right? Because you need more Act 2 statues to be able to run the Uber or the Colossal Ancients, which is going to be interesting. All in all, I think that these crafting recipes are definitely going to shake things up. We're going to see a lot of changes in the way that the game functions. I would say that at the end game, farming these shards, no matter which shard you get, is going to be a good thing. There will be ones that are probably going to be worth more than the others, and we'll have to see how that settles as the game goes on. Also, all of these recipes requiring mid-runes is going to increase the price of the mid-runes rather dramatically. So Pulls, Mals, Ios, Fowls, Lums, Coes, Lems, etc. that are used in these recipes are definitely going to increase the overall value of those mid-runes. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see like Mal runes and Co runes and Pull runes being worth more this season, because for 23, I mean, just to give like a quick math example, assuming that you need around 23 to cap out your character for negative res, right? Assuming you don't make any mistakes, by the way, because some of these roll. Like, for instance, the Mystical Grand Charm rolls between 1% to 3%. So if you roll a 1%er, you're probably going to want to re-roll it, right? Times the number of players, which we recently got a confirmation that there are millions of players from Blizzard. They didn't exactly state an exact number, but they said there are still millions of people playing Diablo 2. So let's multiply that by, at the very least, let's multiply it by 2 million. That means that you need 46 million crafts to deck everybody out. Now, of course, not everybody is going to get decked out in these new crafting recipes, but you kind of get the idea is that this is going to be a constant and basically nagging source toward the economy, forcing these items to become more valuable. So your gems are going to become more valuable. Your mid-runes are going to become more powerful, valuable. And these Northern Worldstone shards, these Worldstone shards in general are going to be very valuable. So finding them at any point is going to be a big boon to your character, and you can probably just use them as trade bait. We'll have to see exactly like how they settle in terms of their overall value. But looking at these recipes, I can tell you right now that every single one of these recipes is going to be very good. Like, I can imagine several items, very good items, that you would potentially use these on. Like, for instance, even just boots, which most people might poo-poo the boots, right? But you can find 40% increased run walk speed with like one really solid resistance, say like 40% to a specific resistance. And then you can use this on the boots and you can get your negative res as well as 40% run walk speed and a solid resistance, right? So like, that's a solid pair of boots in my opinion. Like, I could see myself using those on some of these elemental builds. Like, if I was a fire build, I would probably grab myself a nice pair of boots, find myself some 40% run walkers. I would see if I can get fire res specifically on them to cancel out the Sunder, which you can usually do just by shopping. So like, if you go over here to Geed, or you go to Charcy, you can easily shop. Just go back and forth inside of town and look for the 40% run walks with like the various mods. You can also shop for the J mods there, and you usually want to make sure you re-roll the map until you get the doorway right here, and then you're just going to want to run in and out. And you just run in and out over and over again, and you look for those beautiful items. You're looking for like 320 gloves. You're looking for like 40% increased run walk speed with a good mod, a good secondary mod. It needs a really good secondary mod, like a resistance. You're looking for the 4-socket Jeweler's mod with some other beneficial thing, like Jeweler's mod of the Colossus, or Jeweler's mod of the Whale, or like Jeweler's mod of Simplicity, or Jeweler's mod of I think there's a really good one that gives you like 75% poison length reduction. There's a couple really nice ones that you could potentially find in here. As far as circlets and diadems and stuff like that, you can't shop those. You could potentially gamble them. And that could actually be a really interesting source too, because quite honestly, those are going to be ridiculous this season. Really good circlets. So if you have a circlet and it has a really good modifier on it, and I think I actually have a character with a similar type circlet on it, unless I already deleted that character. But basically, it's essentially, it's a circlet that comes with +3 to a specific skill set. And then on top of the +3 to the specific skill set, it's also going to come with the additional sockets, right? So you're usually looking for something that has both the sockets and the skills, and hopefully maybe even another mod. You can get 2 sockets with 2 mods, which is actually really good. I was really hoping I had one on this character, but it doesn't look like I do. But what you're looking for is you're going to be looking for a helmet specifically that has the +3 to the specific tab skills you're looking for, like fire skills, for instance, on a sorceress. And then also with something like faster cast. Then you take it to Larzik and you get 2 sockets. You put 2 facets in there, and then you would use this recipe on it, and you can get more negative res as well. And that's going to make those helmets like completely amazing. They're going to be ridiculous. Also, similarly, like for instance, on my poison character, which I think I have on here, the poison characters utilize things like the Jeweler's mod armors. And I know I have Toxic Jab, Where You At, Penance, You Rock. Just trying to give you guys some examples here. So many characters. I'm so glad they added some extra staff stabs. There we go. Nox. That's a good one. So in her case, her best in slot armor is actually going to be a specific piece of gear that has 4 sockets in it. So you're looking for facets, right? You want as many facets as you can possibly get. Well, in this particular case, one of my best in slot pieces is actually a 4-socket Griswold's, or not Griswold's, a 4-socket blue armor, which I know I had in here at some point. I think I might have shoved it into a stash tab at some point. Let's check the shared stash on my other character. Boom. I was actually holding on to that particular piece of armor specifically for her. It was one of the ones that I think Bruzak shop for me. Yeah, here it is right here. So this is a Jeweler's Armor of Stability. So this is a 4-socket blue armor that has 24% faster hit recovery, which is really good. You can also get ones that have increased life. You can get ones that have negative requirements, and so forth and so on. So for the recipes, if I was playing a poison character, which is what this character is, I would then go over here, find the virulent armor, and then craft that up. And I would try and get that 8% negative enemy poison res, which is going to stack on additional poison res on top of the facets that I would normally be using. And I think I have some other J-Mods armors hiding in here somewhere. I think, yeah, here's a Jeweler's Armor, Jeweler's Dust Shroud of the Nova Shield, which is kind of interesting for a sorceress, since you can actually synergize that, so which means that when you get hit, you would actually be pumping out a little bit of damage, which is kind of neat. There's also some other versions of these particular armors that you can find, or you can just shop them basically, which is kind of crazy, or you can find them. So picking up blue items is going to be really good this season. Picking up blue boots, blue gloves, blue armors, and looking for those beautiful J-Mods, shopping for them as well. And speaking of shopping for them, Bruzak was shopping for a pair of claws one season. He was looking through Anya over and over again, trying to find those absolutely amazing like trapper claws and whatnot. Those are going to be crazy this season too, because you're going to be able to add lightning res to them. So you're going to shop for your absolutely crazy lightning claw, and then you're going to pull up the recipe that has to do with your specific weapon. Like for instance, in this particular case, it would be the magnetic weapon, and then you're going to craft the 4% increased lightning resistance, negative lightning res, onto those ridiculously expensive claws, which is now going to make those claws even more absolutely insane, right? All in all, I'm really impressed with these recipes. Hopefully they get added in with the ladder. I'm not exactly sure when they're planned to come out, or even if they will come out. But I thought it's definitely worth a video to kind of like bring this to you guys' attention, go over all of the various possibilities that you could have with these, and how they basically could change the economy. As always, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe button if you enjoy the content that I put out. I'm working toward 100,000 subscribers, so it definitely helps. Every single button press helps because it's going to get me closer to that plaque. My YouTube plaque is at 100,000, so this is going to be fun. And as always, keep watching.
Cappy, where I go by the name Chad Elkins, and I do my airstrike tactic, which is what I employed back when I was younger, among other things. Among other things, where I just write my name and number down, like, "Hey, I'm on my way out. Da da da. Cute. Give me a text sometime. Maybe." Yeah, you don't even want to talk. And the reason I wanted to do it because I felt a little bit hypocritical so far as actually going and dating myself, get a fake phone number, all that, and then just get up to the coffee date level. Go to bed. Going to the car. Booze is expensive. I don't even know you, lady. But thankfully, we were having a bunch of people because of a couple of videos I've done before about cold approach. Several people have emailed their own reports from the field. I appreciate these, I do, because, you know, that's anecdotal. Well, yeah, but you get enough field report. Okay, as opposed to what? Nothing?
May your madness have
Some data is better than no data. And you get enough anecdotal bits of evidence, and you're like, oh, okay. What, you think the human experience, you think in Roman times they had, well, we had to conduct a scientifically valid study, account for the double blind? No, I was like, hey, what is the Cornelius think? Oh, Cornelius says Maximus's legions are getting the shit kicked out of them by the Gauls. Oh, maybe we should go over there. So I've never discounted anecdotal evidence. You get enough of it, and then maybe I don't have to go to the field. Maybe I don't have to go to the trip. Maybe I don't have. It made me. Valley. Why do I have this natural apprehension, which I think every guy does? And I don't think it's fear. I don't think it's intimidation or whatever. I think it's very much it's a chore. It's a chore you don't want to do. And I nailed it. And a lot of you, especially if you're younger, you're not going to understand it. But Chad does now. It's prepping for a colonoscopy. I think I nailed co-approach or asking girls out, like going out and doing that dating in the initial stages. It's prepping for a colonoscopy. Because the worst part about the colonoscopy is the prep. And you just got to do this stupid shit. See, but with the colonoscopy, at least you know the doctor's going to do it. Maybe he doesn't. You're knocked out. You don't know if he shoved the thing up your ass or not. Maybe they just like drew butt faces on your ass cheek. Who knows what they do? You're knocked out. You don't know. But I'm just going to assume you paid the doctor good money. The doctor's going to shove the camera up your ass and look for cancer. That's basic. You know, at least you're guaranteed of that. But the prep is just this tedium of drinking a fluid that washes out your system so you're not shitting in the doc's face. That's it. I'm just explaining to you what it is. So you don't have rectal cancer. And you got to be near a toilet. You got to go. You got to drink it at this time. You got to wake up at a certain time. And you got to take a shit at night. There's timing. There's a certain... It's just fucking pure tedium. And it costs you a little bit of sleep. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what it's like. And you don't want to do it. Like, if there's a way to snap your fingers, have the colonoscopy done, okay, you'd be for that. But there's the prep for it. And so there you go. But I did want to read, I got another field report. And it's not, we're up to what, 4, maybe 3. They're all centering on this factor of 10. You ask out 100, you get 10 numbers. A certain, like half or roughly half show up, and then you get laid by 1. So you ask out 100, you get 10 dates, not really. 10 get back to you. 7 go on a date, 1 you get laid. So it's basically 100 ask outs, 10 dates, 1 lay. That's what my experiences were, roughly. That's what a couple other... And here's another one from Anonymous. I've done 75 cold approaches out of the last half year. Thank you. Again, good for you guys for doing it. Good for you. That's good for you. I've probably done 100 overall. but I'm reporting the approaches since I started counting meticulously. I'm above average looking guy, I would say, 5'8". How dare you, sir? How dare you be short? Noticeable physique, six-pack. Out of the 75, 13 numbers. All right, a little bit more than 1 in 10, but you're an exceptionally good-looking guy. 55 rejections, 7 girls I didn't pursue for different reasons once I was in the approach, such as having kids, being too religious for my taste, it being a bad situation to stay in the interaction. That is an underrated one. That's why I like my airstrike approach. They're busy doing shit. They're busy doing shit. You don't want to delay. Look, people just don't go outside and wander around. They're running errands. They got shit going on. They got to get back to the husband. Make your approach and say, hey, when your husband ain't around, you want to get together? The stories I could write about being a dance instructor. All right. Or the girl being too young for my taste, still legal. Some other sort of red flags. Of those numbers, 6 dates. So 13 numbers, 6. About half, right? Half are going to flake. Just waste your time. From those 6 dates, 3 makeouts. Of those 3 makeouts, I had sex and dated one girl for quite a while. There we go. 1 out of 75. About 1 in 100. Of those rejections, 16 were flat-out rejections. 21 said some variation of I have a boyfriend. 2 were married, but I didn't notice the wedding ring until too late. I left these in the metrics because these things happen and it is still it is still effort I put in looking for a wedding ring before approaching. 6 said they were married but had no wedding ring on. 5 said I was too old. Ooh, got headache. Ooh, tinnitus coming right in there in my right ear. 2 women are too stuck on their ex to be open to someone new. So you talk to these girls a little bit more than normal. 1 was a lesbian. Only 2 were what I would call bitchy in the rejection, but I haven't gotten yelled at or recorded or anything like that. Yeah, I think that being put on blast, that's only if you're on the internet or texting. That's it. Which is why when I put Chad Elkin, CPA Chicago, on my fake phone number. Oh, I shouldn't do that to Chad. Just like act like a total prick. Chad Elkin, CPA. Yeah, I got a kink. I got a fetish. I like wearing diapers, and then you feed me in a bottle. I'm going to then screenshot it. No one knows that it's me and not Chad. What the fuck? Some interactions of note. One particularly attractive woman I got the number of, I hung out with at a place. I'm going to keep you anonymous here, man. She mentioned 1 child on the interaction, but she was hot, so I figured why not. On the first date, she told me that she had 3 kids from 2 different fathers, the youngest being 3 months old. The state had removed her children and placed them with a relative. She had been in jail a handful of times, had a court in the morning for a crime, had a child name of there's black people's names, all right? Jerome, Marcus, I'll even let Shaniqua fly, but this name is one of the made-up names that black people, you guys do. Just admit it, okay? Look, white people do it too. They name their kids Charity or Faith or Madison or Tanner or Tarantino, right? We do it. And you guys do it too, but you do it in your own way. I'm not going to mention the kid's name because the kid is innocent, but this is the most made-up fucking bullshit name because shit. Because we're going to be cool. Had a child name, ridiculous name, though she is a white woman. I just got to laugh at that. She did not seem this level of white trash on the approach. Shortest date of my life yet. That's a lot of red flags, man. Look, let's switch it. Let's say you're dating a black gal, and she says, I have a kid. What's his name? And she says, Yaden. Nah, kind of is Will Smith's what's the most whitest name ever? Tanner? What are the name of their kids? The fuck are these names now? Like, Christ is not it. Is his name? Really? Really? Did you go to the Trailer Park Capital for that one? Let's say and I name my daughter Mackenzie, right? You'd be like, you'd slowly back away. Everyone stay in the lane. That's all I'm asking. Jesus Christ. Two different women I went on dates with had a couple recent inpatient psychiatric hospitalizations. One for a self-deletion attempt in the last half year. No, they're not. This is all attention whoring. Fuck you, I call bullshit. And the other for cutting and burning oneself. Not sure if I attract the... No, that's... No. Okay, no. That's just... They're not attempts, they're cries for help. And they're not crying for helps, they're just attention whoring. That's what it is. And unfortunately, that's more normal than you think it is. Not sure if I attract the nut jobs. I try approaching normal-looking women. All right, so there's 2 out of 75. Yeah, that's about right. 2 out of 75, I think, are the fake. Life is so sad. Men are asking me out. Everyone wants to bail me out, and I got a degree, and they might bail me out my student loans, but I still gotta cut something. Look, you see? It's across, not the long way. I cut across the street, not down. Give me attention now, please. One girl I added on an app, but added the wrong account. So weeks later, when I was in town, she stopped at a car and asked for my number. Oh, that's a weird random meeting. Didn't pursue because single mother. One woman acted very interested, talked to her for 5 or so minutes. She said she was down for coffee, then texted back saying, "I'm sorry, but I misread your intentions. I am with someone and have a baby." What? Dude, where are you, Wyoming? Where is this? What the hell? But he really doesn't care who I'm friends with if you want to hang out sometime. I just need the attentions. Attention's an insurance policy. That's... Boy, this ain't even me, and it's exhausting me. This is prepping for the colonoscopy, isn't it? Jesus Christ. At one time, you can ask a girl, she's like, "Yeah, okay, I'll meet you for whatever, a sarsaparilla at the sock hop." And she wasn't impregnated. She wasn't cutting herself. She didn't have Yaden. What is it? It's just, God damn. I would have to disagree with the previous guys. Probably half of my approaches were direct openers. I was walking by, thought you looked nice, and wanted to say hi, and half were situational openers. That drink looks good. What'd you get? Okay, yeah, so you're at a bar or in a social environment where I make a flirty comment at some point later. I think generally if you get 5 or 10 minutes into an approach with a girl and she says she has a boyfriend, you're doing something wrong. Not that I'm an expert. Look. This book right here, you guys waste so much time, so much money, and also so much mental energy approaching. And me just being a pure economist, you guys have no idea. If you ever hung out with me in person, you'd be like, this guy is efficient. Like, holy shit. I want the colonoscopy prep to be as efficient and painless as possible. Where it's like, hey, you're cute, here's my number. Like, I don't have time. Troy Francis, God bless him, is a master. He is a master at able to just talk to a girl about anything you want. I mean, yeah, I could do that too. Maybe not to his level. I don't want to. I didn't want to back then. I never found it fun. It's just, you got to put yourself in the mindset like this is a mouse and you're a cat that caught it and just go play with it and have some fun. I can't get myself in that mindset. I'm like, oh my God, I'm just, oh, is that what you do for a living? Oh, wow. I'm just like, literally every other, my brain is being deprived of oxygen right now. Oh my God. I think it just saves you so much time. Here's my number. Ba-da-da. Ball's in their court. You get on with your life. She's left the fuck alone. I think that's the way to do it still. I know. Well, Cappy, why don't you go on? I did, but it was 30-odd years ago. 20 years ago, maybe. I'm aware of the hypocrisy. That's why Operation Undercover Cappy might become a thing. But the way you do... You girls just can't make it. We're not asking you to make it easy. We are asking you to make it simple. Like, what the fuck? I would say overall, not only purposely learning cold approach, but learning game as a whole has changed my life. The only thing that gives the adrenaline rush cold approach does are things that some actual danger like skydiving. Okay, yeah, no, if you get a hit off of it, absolutely. Oh yeah. I mean, be careful. That's the same mentality that kleptomaniacs, they don't steal to steal the thing, they steal for the risk of getting caught. But yeah, if you enjoy it, absolutely, sure. I've made out with a girl hotter than I could ever imagine due to cold approach. I was in a relationship for a year and a half with a truly stunning blonde due to cold approach. Yeah, a lot of these gals aren't asked out. I don't regret one moment I've spent cold approaching, despite most of it being a grind. The lows are the lows, but the highs are so high. Further than that, I genuinely enjoy most of the interactions I get into, even if the woman is married. People are generally pleasant and friendly if you go about it the right way. Yeah, that's kind of the, like, I got a cat, I got a toy, I'm going to play with it. And I think that is a very good, mature, relaxed approach or mentality to have. I just don't want to.
Good day.
You're younger than me. I'm so bored with people. I am so fucking bored. And I know it's not fair. Say something intelligent and entertaining to me, even though I initiated the conversation. I'll tell you this, what girls, if you cared to, I always appreciated a woman who could spar. Some would say flirt. They're within the same wheelhouse, but spar, like you throw one at her intellectually, she throws it back. Like she understands your joke or your implied something or other, and like, oh really? Yeah, really. That is a little fun. It doesn't even necessarily have to be sexual, but those girls are so rare. It also requires a little bit of culture. You throw a quote from a movie, see if they pick up on it. So who are you really, and what were you before? What did you think, and what did you do? And then they'll look at you if they've seen Casablanca, like, really? I'm like, dang, you know that one. And then you're off to the races. At the risk of sounding too transactional, I like to think about cold approach like grinding for a rare drop on an MMO like RuneScape. If you don't let yourself get it in your head about it, it's a chill grind where you're getting outside, being social, and enjoying the day. Very healthy approach. Only reason I don't have hundreds of approaches is life stuff. Cold approach is well worth it in my opinion. I have no plans to stop. How else can we as men truly make something out of nothing in dating any day we want? I only wish I would have begun it to learn it sooner. That's the one thing about it, is it's free if you do it right. Or it doesn't bother you because you're approaching like a video game and you've got nothing else going on. Like you're just being fun. I could see it that way. But it's still, online dating is a waste of time. I think the worst, the most cost inefficient approach is going to nightclubs. That has got to be the worst, if people are even going to those anymore. But that's where, and a lot of people say, wait, asking 100 girls to get laid once? Yeah, I know. And what percentage of the girls shoot you down? I get it, man. That's where you don't want to prepare for the colonoscopy. But if you do it right, it's efficient. Right? No, look, you don't have to. This is impressive. You guys are asking 75 in 7 months. One guy asked 150 in a year and a half. That's impressive. You're not afraid of nothing now. But over the course of years, like, I'm gonna imagine you guys were looking. That's a lot of girls to ask that. I was there long ago, and you are looking. But for the average person, You don't have to look. There'll be a girl that stands out. Oh, look at that girl over there. Well, yeah, take that opportunity. It may be one a week, about right. If you think about when you go out, unless you're in Wyoming, of course. You go out, you'll see one notably attractive woman that catches your eye a week. About, right? Well, that's 52 a year. Take that opportunity. And that's not. You're talking 30 seconds of your time. Max. You can do that. And that drastically increases your chances. My last thought is a quote from the pickup artist John Body. Question, how many would you pay for 2 guaranteed 7s every year for the rest of your life? He says, my entire bank account in my mother's house. He's 100% right, because when you look what you might actually spend financially and time-wise, that is a steal. Another way to look at it, I mean, take any guy's divorce settlement, divide it by, let's just call it 2,000. That's how many ladies of the evening, shall we say, he could afford. And a lot of times it turns out to be like 1 or 2 a month, depending on how long you're married or how long you have left to live. Link below is the book of numbers analyzing the ROI in pursuit of women. It's on Amazon. You can find it. We got no super chats. We'll see you guys later. Toodles.
Hello guys and gals, and welcome. welcome. So today I want to talk about something interesting. We're going to be talking about how do you know how much value something has? How do you know whether something is worth keeping to trade? How do you know the difference between something that is trash and something that is treasure? And that's kind of what I want to go over today, and it's a really complicated topic. The short answer, the really short answer, is experience. The more you play the game, the more you understand how the characters functions, how the abilities function, like which items are potentially useful to which particular characters, and how many people actually play those characters, you'll have a better understanding of like which items are valuable and which items aren't, and why they're valuable and why they aren't. To start out today, I'm going to start with a couple quizzes. So we're going to do a couple little quizzes here, and we're going to talk about specific items and why specific items are valuable and specific items aren't. So let's start with the phase blades. All right. So let's say you're running along and you find a superior phase blade, no sockets, just 15% enhanced with 3 attack rating. 50% enhanced and 3 attack rating seems like it's a really good base. But is it worth something? Is it trash or is it treasure? We have another one that dropped. It's 15% enhanced with 3 attack rating, and this one rolled 4 sockets. Is this one trash or is it treasure? And then finally we have the same thing that dropped, but it dropped with 5 sockets. Now you might be saying to yourself, well, they're all worth something. And you'd be right. They probably all have some value, some monetary value, but some of them are treasure, whereas some of them are not. And how do you tell the difference between them? Well, first off, one of the things that you have to know about superior items is that superior items cannot be socketed by using the Horadric Cube. A lot of the regular bases, a non-superior base, for instance, something like this, can be socketed using your Horadric Cube. So you can go into the Horadric Cube, you can put this item into the cube. Of course, this one has 1 socket on it, so it's not socketable. But you can put that in the Horadric Cube, and you can basically just roll it, right? And you can roll it for sockets. This particular item, however, cannot be rolled for sockets. It is a superior. And the only place that it can be socketed is at Larzik. If you put this in Larzik's window, he will always give it the maximum number of sockets that it's capable of, depending on the item level that you found it at, which can sometimes be relatively low. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it won't get 6 sockets, because it doesn't really take a very high item level, and phase blades don't really drop at a very low item level, so you're probably always going to get 6 sockets with this phase blade. Now, what could you potentially make in a 6-socket phase blade? Well, there's not a lot of really good options. In fact, pretty much the only option that you can put in a superior phase blade would be Last Wish, which is one of the most expensive rune words in the game. And is this trash or is this treasure? Well, it is valuable to the right buyer if you can find somebody rich enough, which usually means that they're spending real money trade. They're buying their runes, because the amount of runes that it would take to create a Last Wish is like, what is it, like Burr? I can't even remember the rune word right off the top of my head. It's like some crazy combination of runes. Here, let's see. Last Wish D2R. It is Jamal, Jasur, Jabur. That's right, you heard that. 3 Jaw runes, a Burr rune, a Sur rune, and a Mal rune. The Mal rune being the lowest rune in the rune word. So, does it have value? It has a little bit of value. To the right buyer, it could potentially be worth something. You're going to sit on it for a while, though. Because, well, you know, not a lot of people have Jamal, Jasur, Jabur just sitting around waiting for a Last Wish base. Now, this problem is known as, and it can be very eloquently stated, as a supply and demand, right? So the issue here is that Last Wish is in low supply. And the reason why it's in low supply is because it's effing expensive. Right? So nobody really makes it until they're super rich. And in general, an item like this just has no value early on in the game. It's something maybe that you could potentially hold on to if you just want to hold on to it on a mule and try and trade it off eventually to somebody who's trying to make a perfect Last Wish or something. But it has no value like at the beginning of a ladder, and it's probably not going to have much value toward the like middle of a ladder either, because most people don't really have Jamal, Jasur, Jabur just laying around. Now, what could you eventually get for it? Well, you could probably eventually get something for it. Like you could probably snag maybe a Ohm low, something like that. It depends on how desperate the person is or how stupid the person is. Some of these people go on these RMT websites and they'll buy like 40 Burr runes for like a specific price. And they might even throw a Burr rune into your lap in this particular case. And only really because they're just desperate for the base that they have paid all the money for the runes for, that they don't have the base. If they're smart enough to even know that this is like the actual proper base that you would use for a Last Wish. So an interesting thing here is that this is definitely a good base, but not one that you're going to get any money out of really early on in the ladder. Something you can hang on to as like an investment project. Now, the reason why supply and demand comes in here is that the base itself, so the superior 15% enhanced plus 3 AR base is actually in high supply. So it is rare, don't get me wrong, but it is not rarer than the Last Wish people who are creating Last Wishes. Think about it like this. In an entire season, you might have like 50 or 60 of these drop across like the entire community. Maybe even more than that. Maybe even like 120 to 240 across the entire community. And you might have like, I don't know, maybe like 100 or so people make Last Wishes. Maybe a little bit more than that if people are really spending some cash that season. But it just tends to be one of those situations where there will be more of these than there are of people actually making Last Wishes. Moving on to the next one, we have the Superior Phase Blade with 4 sockets. Now, the Superior Phase Blade with 4 sockets can't be rolled anything else. It's stuck at 4. right? So it is a 4-socket only item. Well, what can you put in a 4-socket item? Well, the easiest way to look at this is to go and check to see what you can actually put in a 4-socket phase blade. One of the websites I like to go to for this is Diablo2.io. They have a nice little rune word calculator here, where you can basically pull up the rune sockets. You can put in required sockets 4 right here. And then once you put in required sockets 4, you can go to item group. Now you have to be careful with this because you're going to have to choose multiple item groups because there are multiple recipes for multiple different item groups. For instance, you can choose all weapons, which is going to be Hand of Justice and Passion. So it could have a little bit of a usefulness there for a Hand of Justice person or a Passion player. And then you can also go to melee weapons specifically, which we have nothing. And then you can go to swords specifically, which is right here. Which you have Spirit. Spirit is a relatively common rune word. Nobody's going to pay for a phase blade base for that because it's a bad weapon for meleeing. Voice of Reason, also not really the greatest weapon for physical damage, although phase blades are a decent choice, but you wouldn't really want a 15% enhanced base for a Voice of Reason because it doesn't have any physical damage anyway. Kingslayer might be a halfway decent choice. And then there's Oath, but you would never make an Oath in a phase blade. You would want an ethereal base because it is indestructible. So you're pretty much only down to Hand of Justice. So in the case of before, when we're talking about supply versus demand, Hand of Justice is a low demand item. This is a low demand item because the problem is that you just generally don't have a lot of people building Hand of Justice builds. And the base is probably going to be in higher supply than the demand for that base, which means that you might get like an Istrun for this base, if you're lucky. Maybe even a little bit less than that. You might be looking at more like a Mal. And this really just comes down to the fact that Hand of Justice, which is probably the main rune word that you would make in this base, looking at all the different rune words that you can potentially make, is just not really common enough of a rune word made by enough people within the community to really get you a huge, like, messaging spree of people, like, coming after this item. And these will drop enough that people will just leave them on the ground. Like, the 4-socket bases, because they don't really sell very much, because they're not really a high demand item, you might not even see them up there, or even if you do, they might not sell. So let's move on to the third one. The third one is a 5-socket phase blade. All right. So 5-socket phase blade can make what? It can make a Grief, which is a pretty powerful item. So let's change this to 5 sockets. And let's go back to our rune words, and we're going to go to swords. So we've got Death. You wouldn't put a Death in here because Death is indestructible. You'd want to put that in an indestructible ethereal base. You have Grief, which Grief definitely could go in here, and it would be a very good base for Grief. In fact, the best base for Grief, because it has the attack rating and the enhanced damage, which does in fact add to the total damage of the weapon. It doesn't add to this damage, but I mean that doesn't matter. It still adds to the base damage of the weapon, just like all enhanced damage does. Destruction could potentially be made in there. So you've got another base. It's kind of an expensive one. CTA could potentially be made in there, but I don't really know why you would want to make CTA in that base, but definitely not the best base for that particular purpose. And then these don't really matter over here. So in general, is this one worth something? Yes. Now, going back to the supply and demand, this is a high demand item because people are making Griefs left and right. So if you're a Smiter and you want a Grief, if you're a Barbarian that does like Trav runs and you want a Grief, a Zeal Paladin and you want a Grief, there are a lot of characters that can use Griefs, even if you're just making it for a Mercenary. You can put Grief on a Mercenary with this particular item. There is a lot of demand for this particular base because there is a lot of demand for the Grief actual rune word, right? So this particular base, and this is single player, by the way, guys. Don't get mad that I'm throwing these items on the ground. But this base would potentially be worth something. You probably could pick up easy, low ohm, if not Burr. If you're lucky, if you really hang in there, you could probably grab a Burr for this particular base. It is a perfect Grief base. and it is going to make your grief even better. This is the kind of base that you would literally roll griefs in like over and over and over again to try and get a perfect 400 with the 40% increased attack speed. So you're trying to get like that absolutely god tier grief base. So you'd be looking for, you know, like the 400 on this roll right here and the 40% on this roll. And then I think the other one that you look for is the damage to demons.
Hi there.
Is it this one? I can't remember. There's also life after kill, which is not a bad one either. There's basically like tiny little modifiers that you can potentially get other than that, but a perfect grief with a 40% increased attack speed and a 400 damage is definitely something that you would want to roll in this base, and then you would have essentially one of the most valuable griefs in the game. Now moving on to another base type, let's talk about another one. So we're going to look at a couple different shields here, and we're going to talk about these shields and why some of these shields are worth something and some of these shields are not, right? Unfortunately, I don't think there's any other way to do it other than this, because I really need to impress upon you why specific things are worth money and why specific things are not, right? So, we have a 3-socket ethereal, or not ethereal, 3-socket superior Vortex shield with 45 all-res, 15% enhanced defense, and 10% maximum durability. Now, 3 sockets is not enough to make a spirit, but it is enough to make other bases. There's actually a couple different bases that you can make in this. You can make a sanctuary, which is not exactly the best, but you can also make a dream. As a dream base, this is probably one of the best dream bases out there. Superior Vortex Shield gives you the highest smite damage. You also get the maximum amount of all resistances, and it comes with 3 sockets. Now, why would it coming with 3 sockets matter in this particular case? Well, the reason why it matters in this particular case is that if you are trying to get 3 sockets, you cannot roll 3 sockets, as we talked about earlier, in a superior base, right? So this is another one of those situations where we have a shield with the 3 sockets and the mods that we're looking for, so it's come in the right configuration. How much could you get for this particular shield? I would have to take a guess, but I would probably say easy, low, plus. I would put it in the Sir Burr category, probably. If not even multiple Burrs, depending on the season. So, like, it's going to fluctuate depending on how rich people are during that particular season. But somebody who wants to make a god-tier Dream Shield for their Paladin is going to be willing to invest in a good base, and this is definitely a very good base for a Dream Paladin. Now, what other shields could you potentially make in this? There's not a lot. So if we take a look at 3-socket shields, you'll see that shields have Dragon, which is, well, Dragon is also 3 sockets, now that I look at it. So Dragon, Dream, we've got Ancient's Pledge, Sanctuary, which is the high-res shield. Not exactly the most crazy one, but Dream and Dragon can both go in this base. And then you look at the regular shields. So that's pretty much it, right? Some problem stuff. So here's some problems with this particular thing. So going back to the supply and demand, right? So is this a good base? Yes. Is it rare? Yes. Is it valuable? Yes. Is the demand for it high? No. So the amount of people that like to make Dream and Dragon setups is actually a lot lower than you would think. Especially with the newer seasons where the native paladins are much cheaper and easier to set up than the Dream and Dragons. Although the Dream and Dragons still work, don't get me wrong, you can make the builds way cheaper now. You don't have to spend like multiple Burr runes, multiple Jaw runes, and whatnot to create the setup, right? So you're not always stuck with the Dream and Dragons anymore like you used to be back in the day. If you wanted to do like Holy Fire or Holy Shock, you pretty much had no choice. Because you couldn't break immunities otherwise, because that allowed you to run your Conviction and your Holy Shock or Holy Freeze or Holy Fire, you know, with each other. Of course, there was one Holy Freeze option, but it wasn't that great. In general, though, with this particular item, the demand is going to be low. Especially early on in the ladder season, you're not going to have a lot of people pining, like knocking down your door for this particular item. It may come later on. It's going to be similar to the Last Wish phase build. It's 6 sockets, it's perfect, and it's what somebody would want for a Last Wish. But look at the rooms that are required for a dragon. Sir Low.
This is what
Look at the runes that are required for Dream. Jaw. Right? So these are expensive runes that if you find this item and you hold on to it for a little while, yes, you will eventually find a buyer. And you're probably going to get, like I said, probably somewhere around low ohm, maybe burr runes if you're lucky. Depending on the season and how rich people are in that particular season. So let's move on to the next one. Of course, I ended up with 1 socket in this particular shield. So here we have a superior crown shield with 15% enhanced, and it has all res 45. And it doesn't even really matter that it has 1 socket in it. It can have 1, 2, 3, or 4, or the context of this particular discussion, because they're pretty much all the same. Does this item have value? Not really. It's a self-wheeled item that you could potentially sell for maybe like a Pull rune, Co-rune, or something if you're lucky. It's used on low-level characters essentially. It's a twink shield. It's a like a power leveling item. It's something that you'd put on a low-level character to beef them up and make them stronger. But it's not an end game. It's not something that you would use toward the end of the game at all. Because in general, you're going to want higher smite damage, you're going to want higher defense, you're going to want other stats which are not going to be present on the crown shield. Now, why aren't they present on the crown shield? Because the crown shield is the wrong base type. So as an example, if you look at this shield, this is a Vortex shield. It has a defense of 258, and it has a level requirement of level 66. This has no level requirements, well, level 18, and it only has a strength requirement of 65. This is a normal quality shield. It's a low-level shield. It's a baby shield. It's a baby shield for baby paladins. It's good for that particular purpose. It's something that you would hang on to for yourself or for your friends when you're doing like a new character day or just leveling up, with some buddies. But the thing is it doesn't really have much trade value. So is it trash or is it treasure? It's basically trash, but useful trash.
The order welcomes you.
Moving on to the next item, we have a Vortex shield that rolled enhanced, and I'm pretty sure I set this one to 0 sockets. That was my intention anyway. Now, if I had set this to 0 sockets, it would be a superior Vortex shield with no sockets, and this means that a superior Vortex shield with no sockets is always going to default to 4 if you take it to Larzik. Now, the reason why this is important is because then you are stuck with only 4-socket rune words. So what 4-socket rune words could you potentially put in a Vortex shield? Well, if we look at the shield recipes for 4-socket recipes, you'll see that we have Phoenix, which is Vex, Vex, Low Jaw. We have Exile, which is Vex, Ohm, Ist, Dole. And we have Spirit, which is Tal, Tho, or M. So we have 1, 2, 3... but we'd have to take Exile out of the running because it's a rep durability. Why wouldn't you make Exile in this shield? Because you generally want an ethereal shield for Exile. That's pretty much how that works. So if this did have 0 sockets and you took it to Larzik for 4, it would be worth a lot because you could potentially put a lot of nice runes in it. You could put Phoenix, you could put Spirit, you could just use it as a placeholder shield for your Haas until you get one later. And what would this sell for? Easy, probably low, maybe even Sir. Depending on the ladder, you might even get Burr for it. If it has 1 socket, like the one that you see on the screen right now, the 1-socket versions of these are going to be basically trash. They can't be fixed. So once you have 1 socket in them, unfortunately, no matter how good the shield is, at 45 all res and 15% enhanced, it's essentially garbage if it has 1 socket in it because it can't be re-rolled. Then we have another shield here, which I'm pretty sure I also set to 0 sockets. I don't know why it's doing this to me. I knew I set it to 0 sockets in the hero editor before I started. I probably still have the hero editor open. Let's check and see if I am a fool. Am I a fool? Look at this. Crown shield, 0 sockets. It says it right there. Royal shield, 0 sockets. It says it right there. Vortex shield, 0 sockets. It says it right there. I did my due diligence, and I am upset that the game is messing with me. So this was supposed to be a 0 socket item, and would this potentially be valuable? Well, it's going to default to 4 sockets. Royal Shields are not horrible, but they don't have the highest smite damage, and that's one of the biggest issues. If you compare it to a Vortex Shield, you see it has 5 to 87 smite damage. If you compare it to a Crown Shield has 4 to 12, whereas the Royal Shield only has 24 to 32 smite damage. In general, the Royal Shield and the Crown Shield are going to be the losers in smite damage over the elite bases. So in general, the Royal Shields can be useful to a character when they're leveling up, and you could potentially get like a Ko or something for it if it had 4 sockets, because of course you could make a spirit in that, and it is a good placeholder spirit, and you might even get an Ist for it if you're lucky. But because it's not an elite base, it's not going to maintain the same value as one that's not. And you might be asking, well, how can you tell the difference between an elite base and a exceptional base and a normal base? Well, the easiest way to do that is the level requirement. Most normal bases do not have a level requirement. Some normal bases do, but most of them do not. And even if they do have a level requirement, normal bases generally tend to be extremely low. As you can see from the Superior Crown Shield, it has a normal quality base of, what is it, level 18, right? So this is a very low level base item. You can also tell by the defense. You see the defense on the Superior Crown Shield is only 46, whereas the defense on the Royal Shield is 208 and the Vortex is 258. That's another good indicator, is the defense and the damage and things like that. There's a lot of various ways that you can tell. The Royal Shield has a level requirement of 41, and the Vortex Shield has a level requirement of 66. So as you're going through and you're looking at these items and you're trying to figure out, well, what's a normal base, and what's an exceptional base, and what's an elite base. I have a whole video going over this, by the way. If you want to take a look at that, it's in a separate video, and we'll save that for something else. But it is important to know the value of an item, because if you don't know the base types, well, then you're going to be looking at the wrong items, and you're not going to be knowing, like, hey, this item isn't worth anything because it's not an elite base, or this item isn't worth anything because it's an elite base. I know, I'm blowing your mind. Let's move on to the next one, which is bows. So in this particular case, I'm pretty sure I also set these to 0 sockets. Yes, 0, 4, 4, and 0. Yes. So all the ones that are 1 socket are supposed to be 0s. So we're going to look at these together. So we have a non-superior, 3+ skills, Amazon only, with 0 sockets. Is this worth anything? The answer is no. And you might be asking, well, why not? Well, if you take it to Larzik will guarantee you 5 sockets, which is not exactly the particularly most valuable base. 5 sockets is a mist bow, which could be okay if you have Chamroon laying around, but nobody's really going to pay you much for a +3 non-superior 5-socket Grand Matron. If you roll it in the Haradrim Cube and you get 4 sockets, then you have something that's valuable. You could potentially make a faith bow in there. You could make there's actually a really large number of 4-socket bows. So instead of just rattling them off, let me pull them up here so you can actually see them. So there is the brand bow, which is Jalo Malgul. There's the ice bow, which is really good for the freezing Arizons at Amshale Jalo. Faith is Om Jalem Eld. And you got Insight, which is Raltir Tal Sol, super cheap, really nice meditation aura, and pretty good for early game. There's Wrath, which nobody makes, and there's Harmony, which is actually pretty decent because it has the Vigor aura on it. I actually love to make the Vigor aura for my characters. In general, there's quite a few good bow bases that you could make in this bow. So if you did roll 4 sockets, do you have something that's valuable then? Sort of. A regular non-superior +3 with 4 sockets has value. Probably around like Ist, maybe Gull if you're lucky. You're probably not going to get much more than that. And this has to do with the fact that, well, it's not superior. Superior bows are what you're kind of looking for with stuff like that. There's also some of these bases you don't really want to make in a Grand Matron bow. So you really wouldn't want to make an ice bow In a Grand Matron, you'd preferably want to make those in matriarchal bows because they're faster. Faith bows definitely go in Grand Matron, and brand bow can go in Grand Matron, or it can go in matriarchal, depending on what you're focusing on, whether it's the damage or the bone spear proc, which I've done both.
Good day.
Harmony doesn't really matter, whichever one you want. It's just a buff stick anyway. So is it valuable? Sort of. It's not trash and it's not treasure, but it's definitely some pocket change that you can keep around. Right. Moving on to the next one, we have a +3 non-superior 4-socket that just rolled that way, right? So it's the same thing as the one we had before. It already rolled 4 sockets, so that's good. We don't have to invest any currency in it to roll it, so there's no possibility, essentially. With the other one, unfortunately, you have a possibility of getting something good. And it's actually a chance between, what is it, like 1 and 6? Or 1 and 5? Is it 1 and 5? Or is it? Yeah. I think it still is 1 and 6 because I think the other two still roll. So how it works is if it rolls 6, it goes to 5. If it rolls 5, it goes to 5. So there's a 2 out of 6 chance that it will be a 5-socket bow. A 1 out of 6 chance it will be a 4-socket. And if you add it all up, what is that? 2. So it's like a 5 out of 6 chance that it will be not a 4-socket bow. Right? So this is a chance at a 4-socket bow, and this is actually finding a 4-socket bow, which is going to be a lot more valuable to you in general. It's just going to be something that you can actually utilize right away. You can make an insight in it, and then later on you could potentially trade it off to somebody for something valuable. Now, if any of these bows roll anything other than +3 skills, so the +3 rolls between +1 and +3, right? So this is something that you're going to be looking for, right? If it doesn't have +3, it's immediately garbage. Like, nobody is going to want to make a high-end base item, like Faith, for instance, which is Om Ja Lem Eld. So 2 high runes and 1 mid rune. Nobody's going to want to invest 2 high runes and a mid rune in a bow that only has +2 skills, right? So that's the first consideration that you have to think of is, does it have at least +2 skills? So every time you see one of these drop, a Grand Matron or a Matriarchal bow, you pick it up and the first thing you do is you go, does it have +3? All right, you're like, yeah, it does, okay. How many sockets does it have? How many sockets can it have? Can I roll it? Is it superior? Blah, 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 blah. And you're going to run through the numbers and you're going to figure out what to do with it. Next, we have a... Is this just the same one? That's the same one. All right, so next we have a superior Grand Matron bow with 4 sockets. Now, this is extremely valuable. Very valuable. It is a treasure item. Now, why is this a treasure item? The reason why this is a treasure item is because you cannot craft a 4-socket, 15% enhanced, +3 skill Grand Matron. The reason is because superior items, as we talked about earlier, cannot be put in the cube, right? So this was supposed to be 0, as I showed you guys earlier. This superior Grand Matron bow with the 15% enhanced is supposed to be 0 sockets. So treat this as 0 sockets. I know it didn't roll that way. I'll try to do better next time. I'll figure out what the bug is. In this particular case, when you have this particular bow, the reason why this is not valuable is because if you take it to Larzik, it goes to 5, right? Well, what is 5 good for? 5 is good for Mist. Mist is okay. It's not the most crazy item in the world. You might be able to get like an Ist for this base if you're lucky. Maybe a little bit less. It depends on if anybody is actually willing to make a Mist bow. Why do people generally not want to make Mist bows? Well, because Faith is better. The investment for Mist isn't really the highest at a Cham rune, but if you're going down that road anyway, you might just well spend that Cham rune on your superior Grand Matron bow. So in retrospect, between these two bases, which one's more valuable? Well, this one, the 4-socket 15% enhanced, is way more valuable than the 15% enhanced +3 with 5 sockets. And the reason why is because of the bases, right? So you can make so many rune words in 4 sockets, but you can't make so many rune words in 5 sockets. If we take a look at 5 sockets, you literally see the only bow on the list is Mist. That's it. Now, does Mist have purpose? Yes. There are some good uses for Mist, and I have used Mist myself in a couple builds. But I would not pay nearly as much for this base as I would for this one. Now, this one, how much is this base worth? You're talking Baroons. Probably, depending on the season, you might even get like 2 or 3. Especially if it has +3 AR. If you got +3 AR in there, that skyrockets it a little bit higher, and then people are going to be trying to roll a perfect faith base in this particular bow. So they might even just like the base itself might actually be worth more than the runes to actually create the faith bow. Let's, I'm going to go prepare some more things here, and we're going to talk about some more stuff. Alright, I have a couple things gathered here on my sorceress, and we're going to be talking about them. The first thing we're going to be talking about is this particular bad boy right here, which is a 6% Magic Find Small Charm. Do 6% Magic Find Small Charms have value? Even a 7%. Do 7% Magic Find Small Charms have value? Not really. The problem with 7% Magic Find Small Charms is that they don't have anything else on them. Blue items can have 2 modifiers. And any blue item without 2 modifiers is not going to be valuable in the least. Could you get something for it, maybe? Trade a perfect amethyst or something? Or maybe even try and finagle like a co-rune out of it? Perhaps. But the moral of the story is that most charms in the game tend to be only worth something if you have an additional stat. Now, let's take a look at one that probably is worth something, which is this one right here. Now, the difference between them is very minor. This is 1% Magic Find better, but it has a secondary modifier of 10 to mana. Now, 7% is the maximum roll that you can get for a small charm. 17 mana, I believe, is the maximum mana that you can get on a small charm. So if you have a perfect one of these, it would be a 7% Magic Find 17 mana small charm, and in that case you would probably have something worth probably up to a low rune, if not maybe even a Sur. I'm actually not exactly sure of the exact price on that, but it would be expensive. And the reason for this is not because 7% Magic Find is really valuable. The reason is because of the combo. Now, blue items tend to be worth more and more and more because of the combo. The more combination of effects they have on them, the better they tend to be worth. For instance, a Fire Skills Sorceress Large Charm is a skiller. And skillers, they're valuable in a very minute way. Depending on the class, some are more valuable than others, where some of them are completely and utterly worthless, like a Curse's Necromancer Charm, or like a offensive Paladin Skiller, which nobody really seems to want, and I think me and the Kinship probably are the only ones that buy them for fun builds like the Holy Shock and Holy Freeze Paladins and Holy Fire Paladin and stuff. But for the most part, like, a charm like this, that doesn't have any secondary stat, tends to be less valuable than ones that do. There are lots of other secondary stats that you can get on here. You can get +6 dexterity, +6 strength. You can get +2 life, up to 45 life, in fact. A +1 fire skiller with 45 life would be insanely valuable. You would have something worth burr runes at that point. And this is kind of where I'm trying to go with this, is that when it comes to blue items, especially charms, most of the time it has to do with the combination of effects, not necessarily the like individual value. And I'll show you some more examples of this as we go along. I have some other stuff that I want to show you on this character, though. For instance, we have these. So if you took a look at these and you're like, those are pretty nice.
Good evening.
Are they worth anything? So do they have a trade value? The answer to that question is that minimally. I mean, somebody would probably pay something for them. Maybe Ist, maybe Gull. If I was lucky, maybe Vex. But they're not going to be like burr rune, like multiple burr rune value. What would push them over the edge into multiple burr rune value? Well, 2 things would have to change on this particular item to push it into the multiple burr rune value. One, it would have to have a third resistance. So one of the easiest ways for this to be pushed over into that category would be for it to have, instead of 32% or 63% extra gold for monsters, it could either have, number one, a really high magic find roll, or number two, it could have lightning resistance specifically. Unfortunately, if it's poison resistance, most people don't want it, because poison resistance tends to be the least valued resistance in the game. Other than that, these boots were very close, very, very close to being just godlike in general. Let me show you a ring as well. I have a ring I'm going to show you. Give me just a second. Alright, so here we have a ring that I got in Soul Self-Found, which means it has no value because it's in Soul Self-Found. But that's besides the point. So this particular ring is called the Ravenhold ring. It's a rare ring. It has +5 to minimum damage, which is pretty decent actually. 123 attack rating, which is actually really high. It's actually higher than you're actually normally able to get on a ring, and I'll explain why. 3% life leech, which is kind of low, but the presence of life leech at all is definitely appreciated. It also has cold resistance of 30%, which means it actually rolled a 20% cold res modifier, and it rolled a 10% all res modifier on top of that. And then at the bottom there you see the +3 light radius, which is actually a combo mod, which increases the attack rating even more. That's the reason why it's 123 attack rating instead of a lower value, because it rolled 2 attack rating mods together. Now, is this item valuable? A little bit. You could probably pick up like easy Gullvex for it. It's missing some of the modifiers that it would need to be truly godlike. First off, the life leech would need to be higher. Second, it really could have used Dual Leech. Dual Leech would have made this into a absolutely mint ring. If it had gotten, say, like just even like a 4% mana leech, it would have really pushed it over the top and made it extremely valuable. That Dual Leech would have really made it work. Cold res is a decent res, but the 20% extra could have potentially rolled on one of the better reses like lightning or fire. Not that cold res is terrible, mind you, and it could be particularly useful for any character who is obviously suffering from negative cold res, like a Holy Freeze Paladin, a Holy Freeze, or a Freezing Arrow Amazon, or various other characters. But a ring like this is really good. So why is a ring like this really good? Again, it's the combo of effects. It's not because it has high attack rating, because if that were the case, then you could just sell every platinum ring for a burr rune. It's not because it has life leech. It's not because it has all res. It's not because it has high cold res. It's because of all of them together. It's because you ended up with every single mod in combination, right? So it's the fact that you have the AR, which is very important for melees. And honestly, most melees cannot use rings that do not have attack rating on them, because if they do, they pretty much just won't be able to hit anything. It has Life Leech, which allows you even the tiniest amount of Life Leech. Even 3% Life Leech is enough for good melee characters, physical damage melee characters, to be able to push through. It's not a big deal. As long as you have it, it's better than not having it. In fact, I can't really say that having huge amounts of Life Leech, unless you're getting into like the 100% range, is really that beneficial to your character over, you know, like something else that could potentially help you, like more damage, because more damage also means more Life Leech. Which again, 5 minimum damage, more damage. All res. So the 10 all res is very nice. It's a very nice stat in general. My apologies, I'm still getting over strep throat. I'm trying my best today. I'm struggling. 10 is really nice, but it's not perfect. It's 11, I think, is perfect. If you ever want to know like what is perfect and what is not when you're looking at modifiers, there are websites you can go to that will kind of teach you this thing. And you can see the different modifiers like prefixes and suffixes. If you just type in D2R, like prefixes and suffixes, there's one in particular that I like to go to that has like the best list of all the mods. It's this one right here. I'm not sure how accurate it is to Diablo 2 Resurrected specifically, but it's on the fandom. And you can search for them here. So, like, for instance, let's do all resistances, and we come up with 11% rainbow modifier, rare rings, level 56. Now, another thing that I want you to notice about this ring is its level requirement. Now, level requirement can increase the value of an item tremendously. In fact, when I was showing you guys the boots earlier on this particular girl right here, you may have noticed that the level requirement on these boots is only level 29, right? There are low-level dueling communities within Diablo 2 that search for specific items that have a lower level. So when you look for items, or when you're looking at an item, just because an item doesn't seem good to you as a high-level character doesn't necessarily mean that an item isn't good for a lower-level character in those low-level dueling brackets. And I'm pretty sure the brackets are something like 9, 15, 30, and I can't remember what the last one is. I think it's like, I want to say it's 48, but I could be wrong. But low-level dueling is generally around 30. So when you're looking at looking for low-level dueler equipment, there is specific pieces of equipment that are extremely valuable in the low-level dueler community, and that's a whole topic unto itself. Let's go take a look at a couple more of my characters, and we're going to pick out some more items and basically show you why they're valuable. So we're going to go to, let's just pick a character at random here. I don't know if there's any good on that character. Let's try this one. Actually, she does have a infinity. A self-wheeled infinity. Alright. So here we have an Astrion's Iron Ward. This is my Astrion's Iron Ward for my Northstar Spider. And there's Chunk's ear. I got Chunk's ear, got Chunk's ear. I got Chunk's ear, got Chunk's ear. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm keeping that, though. It's my ear. Level 99, too. I got his level 99 Paladin's ear. I dueled him for it. I killed him with my Northstar. He said I was bad manners. And he gonna say it too. Be like, yeah, you are bad manners. All right, so let's look at the Astrion's Iron Ward. So what makes an Astrion's Iron Ward valuable and what makes it not valuable, right? Well, if you're doing a Northstar Smiter, what makes it valuable is +4 combat skills. It rolls between +2 and +4. So if it's not +4, it's immediately not the greatest. It also rolls the damage bonus, the damage +81 that you see right here. You see that right there, the damage +81. That is grief damage. It's the same damage that's on a grief, it's just less of it. And that is also very important as well if you're trying to do the Northstar Smiter, because that gives you a huge damage bonus on your smite. And that rolls, I think, as high as, I think it's 84, I want to say. I could be wrong, but I think it's 84. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for, like, a max grief damage +4 combat skills Astrions for this particular build. Is that valuable? Yes. You're probably going to get a good price for it. Maybe like Vex, Ohm, maybe low if you're lucky. Now, a perfect Astrions, perfect non-ethereal or perfect ethereal, with like +4 and perfect grief damage and perfect enhanced and perfect all, you know, like every stat is perfect. The bonus attack rating is perfect. Like those things are ridiculously valuable. Good luck on even selling them. I don't even know if anybody's gonna have enough money for them. You're talking multiple birds at that point. It's a low demand item though. So going back to our original thing, like how in demand is a perfect ethereal Astrions? Not as in demand as you would think. But the supply is very low. Extremely low, actually. Good luck actually even finding a perfect ethereal Astrions. So good luck even finding an ethereal Astrion at that. I have not found a lot of Astrions, but like when they do actually fall, hopefully there'll be +4 skills for you, because it's very sad when they're not. Let's talk about some of these other items. So I've got combat skillers here. Plain combat pally skillers. Are these worth anything? Yes, they are. Because Paladin combat skills is pretty much the best skiller for the Paladin, bar none, there is a very high demand for combat's pally skills. Are they worth a lot with nothing on them, just plain combat skillers? They're not worth a ton, but you're definitely going to at least pick up like Ist, Gull, maybe even Vex, even for planes, depending on how many people are working that season. Because like the demand for them can be extremely high. Hammerdins want them, North Star Smiters want them, Zealers want them. I mean, there's tons of characters that can get good use out of combat skillers. Faux Paladins want combat skillers. Pretty much all the good skills on the Paladin are in this tree. Yes, there are some good auras in the offensive tree, but at the end of the day, it's just not worth pumping the auras. Unless you're doing Holy Freeze, Holy Fire, or Holy Shot. Meow, meow, meow. Meow, meow, meow. Meow, 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 meow. Alright, so this is worth something, but how about a +1 with some other effects, right? So going back to what we were talking about earlier about charms that have something else on them, right? So if they have something else on them, then they become much more valuable. This is just a general consensus across the board by most players, is that once you have a +1 pally, you already have something that's mildly valuable because it is a high demand item, but once you start adding in other modifiers, 7% faster run walk, 12% faster hit recovery, +6 dexterity, +6 strength, 45 to life, which is the most valuable one. Those additional modifiers on the skiller is going to give it more value. And so when you find, like, you know, you're running along and let's say you're killing demons, you know, like blah 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 blah, die demons, blah 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 blah, and you're like oh, something dropped, or lion branded, oh, it's so pretty, and you pick it up and you're like, oh, +1 paladin, it's so beautiful and I love it. It's good, it's amazing, it's a nice find, right? But it's not as amazing as a +145. +145 is game changing. You're talking multiple burr runes at this particular point, right? It's the combination of the effects for the charms that makes them valuable, not the effects themselves. Like this All Res 5, it's nice. It's a nice charm. I might get like an Ist rune for it, maybe a little bit less. I don't know. It depends. If the All Res 5 had rolled with something else, like All Res 5 20 life, I actually can't even roll 20 life with All Res 5. I don't even remember. Do I got a life charm in here? Do I even have one in here somewhere? I don't even know if I do. Ooh, that's a beautiful one right there.
Good day.
That's a fine small charm, which is a +3 max damage, although it rolled low on the AR of +10. It goes up to 20. And instead of rolling the 3-20-20, which is your fine small charm of life, it rolled 3% faster run walk, which isn't terrible either. Having run walk on your charms isn't awful, especially if you're going for a run walk build. And same thing here. So 36 AR is the highest you can get for a steel charm, and then it also has 3% faster run walk, which makes it worth something. A 36 steel charm by itself isn't really worth anything, and a 3% faster run walk charm by itself isn't really worth anything. But a 36 attack rating, 3% faster run walk could potentially get you something like an Ist or something like that. It depends on the value of how many people are running that particular season. Here's another good one right here. This is a shocking small charm. So shocking small charm is 1 to 58. This is a very high number. Lightning charms, especially if you're doing things like my Thor build, are extremely valuable. But the thing is that getting the really, really good ones requires you to have both mods. The only way to get the really good ones is to have a shocking small charm with the additional modifier of the extra lightning damage. And we can go back to this website real quick and I'll show you what I mean. So if we go to lightning damage, small charms, right? So we get static at 6 to 11. We get 12 to 24. What's the highest we can get on a small charm? So 44 to 71 is the highest, which is the shocking. So this particular one rolled 58, which is a mid-roll in between 44 and 71. So the higher roll would have been the 71 roll, which is what you would want. But this is not the end of this particular charm. So 71 is only the prefix, and then we also get the suffix. So the suffix is the other side of the equation, which gives us the of storms, I believe is what it is, shocking small charm of storms, which can go as high as 28, right? So if we add those two numbers together, we end up with a 71 plus 28, which I believe is 99. Yes. So you end up with a 99 lightning damage small charm. So how much is the 99 lightning damage small charm worth versus this 1 to 58? Well, the 1 to 58 might get you like a Koru or something if you're lucky. Maybe an Ist if somebody's desperate. The 1 to 99, on the other hand, is probably worth a burn. Yeah. So understanding how items can potentially be valuable like this, how the combination, the confluence of two things comes together to make something worth money is important. Let's see if I can find any more in here. So here's a good example of one. This is a bad combination. So fire resistance 11% is a good mod. That is a perfect modifier. Doesn't get any better than that. So that is a ruby small charm. And those are actually really handy because spirit shields don't come with fire res. So a lot of the times you do need to cover that fire res that's not on the spirit shield for a lot of various classes. Also if you're using a fire sunder. Now the other one, the other side, the suffix, is +2 dexterity. Not exactly the greatest roll. If it had rolled mana, if it had rolled life, it had rolled all sorts of various things other than that, the combination of the two would be much better. But the problem is that the second modifier wasn't amazing. Is it worth anything as it is? Probably not. Maybe like a Ko or something. I'm sure I've got like 1,000 items in here I could potentially show you. That's like a self-use small charm, fine charm, large charm of Vita. It's not quite good enough to be sold for value, but it's very good for use, just as you're playing the game. In fact, let's go over to a character I know. Oh, there's actually a really nice one right there. That's a 3 max, 13 AR, 18 life. So this is not a 320-20. This is a 313-18, which is still very close to a 320-20. You could probably still pick up an Ist rune for that, bare minimum. Because it has the right modifiers. So this is exactly what you would be looking for, but you would hope for better, which is your 320-20, and those are extremely valuable. But we got 313, which rolls between 10 and 20. And then we got the Vita, which rolls up to 20. So we're only 2 points off on the Vita. That's actually a pretty darn decent fine small charm of Vita. I think I might have to, loop that over to one of my Vengeance Paladins or something. Actually, I think I deleted my Vengeance Paladin. Now that I think about it. Alright, so time for some rapid fire. I'm going to show you some armor bases, and we're going to decide whether or not these are trash or treasure relatively quickly. First off, we have a Great Hauberk at 435 defense. 3 sockets. Non-ethereal. Trash or treasure? Neither. It's not really treasure. Is it valuable? Not really. Is it useful? Yes. You could throw a treachery in there. You could throw a hustle in there. You could just throw a couple things in there. You could use it for yourself. I would rate this as self-use. It's not exactly a high defense plate. One of the things that you could potentially do at any point is you can just do a quick Google search. You can find out, for instance, just type in D2R Great Hauberk. There actually is a cheat sheet floating around somewhere if anybody has a link to it, which actually lists all the armor values. But you can see that the armor value from this one is 395 to 501. This is a 435, which means it's mid-range. So for it to be a good plate, it would have to be a 501 Great Hauberk, and even then, not exactly the most amazing. because there are better options that you could potentially use other than the Great Hauberk. But if it was a 501, you could probably get like an Istrun for it or something. I would see that. Moving on to the next one, we have a Wormhide at 365 with 3 sockets. It has a strength requirement of 84. Now, this is a relatively low strength requirement elite base. The problem with this is that the defense is just really bad. Yes, it could be useful for some bases, but in general, just not really very valuable. Although, you could always take it to the NPC and get 35k in the bank.
I am overburdened.
Here's a Wire Fleece at 481. This is on 3 sockets. Now, 481's not bad. The strength requirement on the Wire Fleece isn't that awful. It's okay. Is it valuable? Maybe like a hull. Something of that nature. Now we have a 3-socket Dusk Shroud with 384. It's very low defense, but it's also very low strength requirement. So it could be useful for a caster type. Does it have value? No, not really. Now we have a Ethereal Loricated Mail with no sockets. This is 715 defense. So let's look up the Loricated Mail real quick, and let's see if that ranks as a high Loricated Mail or not. So that's the first thing we're going to do. We just need to see if the defense is a high value. Now, the easiest way to do this, and you can just do this with a calculator, is you want to look up the Loricated Mail and find out what the maximum defense value of a Loricated Mail is, which is 496. Then you want to take your calculator real quick and just simply do 496 plus 50%. The ethereal nature of an item increases the defense by 50% base, which means that you end up with 744. So this is a 715, which is actually really close to the top end, which would make this a pretty decent armor. It is not socketed, though, which is a problem. So in this particular case, you would need to roll it. You could take it to the vendor, and you could just simply Larzik it to 4, which would be a good Fortitude base, but if you wanted to specifically use it for a 4-socket base, well, this wouldn't be... 3-socket base, then obviously 4 sockets isn't what you want. So it depends on what you want to actually put in the armor. Usually what you do with these, since they're not perfect and they're not really super valuable, is you just roll them, hope that they end up with the number of sockets that you want, or that is the most valuable to sell, which would probably be 3, and then you sell them. You could probably pick up an Istrun, maybe even a little bit higher, maybe Gull. Although the market was kind of wacky last season, where like Gulls were less than Ists, and like, it was all over the place. I don't know what to think about it. But is it valuable? Yes. Ethereal base, high defense, and it can potentially have the right number of sockets. Now, if you roll 2 or you roll 1 socket, it is worthless. You could potentially make a smoke for your mercenary if you get 2, but it's not going to have any trade value at 2. Let's move on to the next one. So we have a 3-socket Archon plate. Rolled with 496 defense. So let's take a quick look at the Archon plate. So the Archon plate rolls between 410 to 524, which makes this a halfway decent Archon plate. It's not terrible, but it's not the most amazing either at 524. 524 can make a pretty big difference with some of the rune words, especially the ones that give you a large amount of defense. You might be thinking, well, 28 defense? 28 defense doesn't make that big of a deal. But the problem is that you have characters like the Barbarian, you have characters like the Paladin, you have characters that are multiplying defense by massive amounts. Holy Shield, Iron Skin, Shout, so forth and so on. And, like, things get kind of crazy. 24 defense can turn into, like, 2,000 defense before you realize what's going on with all the plus bonuses and like level 50 holy shields and all sorts of other crazy stuff. So the higher this defense value is, the better it's going to be. And you might be saying to yourself, well, wouldn't it be better if it was in a superior base? Well, superior bases have their place too, but the problem with superior bases is they cost a lot to repair for armors. So in general, when you're looking at bases, a 524 non-superior could be more attractive to somebody who is avoiding superior bases, whereas a superior base is going to be a different story. So does this have value? Yes, you could easily pick up an Istrun for this, if not, maybe more. Let's move on to the next one. A 2-socket Archon plate with 485 defense. 485 defense is still kind of a mid-ish roll. 2 sockets, not really valuable. What can you make in this? You could make a smoke. Useful early on, definitely. If I found this early on, I would throw a smoke in it in a heartbeat, and I would wear that until I got a better armor. But its trade value is relatively null. You might be able to get like a bow or a pull for it, if you're lucky, and only early on. Here we have a 4-socket, ethereal, 15% enhanced defense Archon plate. Is this valuable? Yes, highly valuable. This is a very good, not perfect, but this is a very good fortitude base. What would be a better fortitude base? Most likely a higher defense base armor type, like a sacred armor or a shadow plate or something of that nature that has more armor than the superior Archon. The thing is that the reason why people use Archon plates is because they have relatively low strength requirement for relatively high defense. Well, your mercenary doesn't need that. Most of the mercenaries have pretty high strength requirement, or strength in general, and they can actually pretty much wear most of the armors anyway. But does this have value? Absolutely. This would be valued probably somewhere around like Ohm Sur, even if not Burrun. Depending on the season, of course, but definitely in that particular range, somewhere around Sur Burr, I would imagine. Very, very good. And the reason why is because, well, it's ethereal, 15% enhanced, and 4-socket. Now, if you had an ethereal 15% enhanced with 3 sockets, that could be even more valuable because those are even more rare. Moving on to the next one, we have a shadow plate with 479 defense. Now, first off, before you even look at anything else, look at that honkin' strength requirement at 230. Nobody's using that. Yeah, it's an elite armor. Yeah, it has decent defense at 479. Not amazing, but it's decent. And it's 3 sockets. But who's using that? Your mercenary, I guess? Or your strength stacking barbarian? For the most part, an item like this has relatively no value. Well, it's just 35k in the bank, 35k in the tank. Here we have a superior sacred armor. This one is 1,035 defense with 15% enhanced and 4 sockets. Probably one of the best fortitude bases out there. And as you can clearly see, when you compare it to the Archon, it's almost, what is that, a 132 armor more than the superior Archon. So when you look at something like this, you're looking at Burrun, maybe even multiple Burruns. This is a god tier fortitude base for a mercenary. This is something that you look for. You make your fortitude base for your mercenary in this, and your mercenary becomes a freaking god tier creature. Very, very valuable. Next on the list is a 15% enhanced superior mage plate with no sockets. So some people look at this and they immediately say trash because they don't know. So not all items in the game have the same number of max sockets that every single item does. These items are elite bases, and almost every single one of these elite bases has the ability to roll 4 sockets. This is not an elite base, this is an exceptional base. That's why it has a lower level requirement than something like the Archon with the same graphic at level 63. This is a 3-socket maximum. So what can you make in a 3-socket superior mage plate with 15% enhanced defense? Well, you can make Enigma. And that is one of the main and primary uses of a 15% enhanced defense superior mage plate. Now, you might not always want to make it in a superior base because some characters get hit too much and they got to repair their armor all the time, which then costs a huge amount of money. But other characters don't get it all the time and they don't care about it. So in this particular case, you would choose this. But why would you choose a mage plate over something like an Archon? Well, let's talk about that as well. So let's assume this one is 3 sockets as well. And you're looking at these 2 armors and you're like, oh, I do have a 3-socket one. You're looking at these 2 armors and trying to figure out which one's better. Right? Well, this one has 103 strength requirement and this one has 55. Enigma has a relatively large amount of bonus strength on it. So if you pull up Enigma and you look at it, Enigma comes with a bonus strength that scales based on character level up to bonus of 74, right? This means that as long as you have the minimum requirement of 55 strength to put on the Mageplate Enigma, you will then get 74 more strength on top of that bonus. Which means that you end up with 55 plus 74, which is 129, and then you only need an additional 23 to put on your Monarch Shield. This is one of the reasons why people like to make Enigma into low bases, is because they can keep their relative strength requirement low, and then their relative strength low as well, and then that way they can basically have their bonus strength and use it to their advantage. Stacking as much strength as they possibly can. So Mageplate ends up being a good choice for this. And some people actually even go as low as a light plate for this. A really nice 3-socket, 15% enhanced light plate for the same exact reason, which is keeping their strength requirement even lower, because the light plate has an even lower strength requirement than the Mageplate. I think we can move on to... I don't even know. I've already been talking for an hour and 8 minutes, and I gotta say that I've covered a lot of topics. The problem is that there are 1,000 million things that have value within this game. Some people are talking about how most of the items in this game are useless, and I have to laugh because I think to myself, like, no, not really. Most of the items in the game are not useless, just that most people don't know the usefulness of most of the items. And that's kind of the entire purpose of this video, is to teach you that there are a lot of items in the game that do have value, but you have to have the experience to know why they have value, right? So like, say for instance, you're looking for a weapon for your mercenary, your barbarian mercenary, and you come across a ethereal conquest sword. Ethereal conquest swords are extremely valuable for mercenaries because they offer a high damage output. You can put rune words in them, like Kingslayer, and you can put Plague in them and all sorts of other things in them, which can be really valuable for your mercenary, giving him high damage output while also allowing him to provide you with utility. Every single type of mercenary has their own, like, specific best-in-slot equipment. Take, for instance, Infinity. Right? So let's say you were going to make an Infinity character, and I don't know exactly which character my Infinity's on, so I'm just going to grab my actual Infinity self-wheeled character. And we're going to talk about Infinity for a second. So Infinity is a very powerful item. But what base do you make it in for your mercenary? Well, you generally want to make this in a faster base than anything else. The reason is because if you look right here, this little special thing called 40% chance of crushing blow is the main reason why. Okay? When you make yourself an Infinity, you want the mercenary to attack as fast as possible because of this. Because if he attacks really, really fast, he applies crushing blow really, really fast. And this allows him to chew down monsters' HP by massive degrees. It doesn't even matter how much damage he's doing, and of course he is still doing really good damage, because if you make it in an ethereal base, which is what you generally want to do for a mercenary, because mercenaries don't need non-ethereal bases. They don't break equipment, right? So ethereal bases are very, very good for mercenaries in general. Well, so what are you looking for? Well, if you look at all the bases in the game, and you start to go over them and try and figure out exactly which base is potentially the best, let's take a look at Ariat Summit. Polearms. Now, in Diablo 2 Classic and Diablo 2 LOD, Diablo 2 LOD specifically, they did not allow you to make Infinity in spears. However, in Diablo 2 Resurrected, they do allow you to make Infinity in spears, so you have to check, right? So the fastest base in the category of polearms that has the ability for 4 sockets, so you have to exclude the Ogre X, is -10. So there are 2 -10 bases. There is the Giant Thresher, and there is also the Thresher. However, if we go over to the spear bases, you will find that there is a spear base in here that has -20. The -20 base, and it also is capable of 4 sockets, is the Mancatcher. The Mancatcher is the fastest base for the Infinity that allows your mercenary to apply that crushing blow as quickly as they possibly can. This means that your Merc's going to get off as many crushing blows as possible, and also be spamming some of that crazy chain lightning all over the place. But in general, just is going to apply that crushing blow better. On top of this, attacking faster just simply means he's going to restore his life better, and he's probably going to stay alive easier. Now, getting your hands on this particular base is a problem. So, if you just find a 4-socket man catcher, nobody's going to want to put a 4-socket Infinity into a 4-socket man catcher, so it's a worthless base. If you find an ethereal man catcher and you take it to Larzik, it's going to get 5 sockets, so that's no good neither. You can roll an ethereal man catcher to 4 sockets if you're lucky, or you can find it at 4 sockets. Now, if you do happen to find a superior one and you take it to Larzik, again, boo, only 5 sockets. So what's one of the most valuable bases when with this? Well, this, when you're looking at the Infinity base, is you're looking for a 15% enhanced ethereal 4-socket, because you cannot roll an ethereal superior 15% enhanced 4-socket. You have to find it. So if you see a gray man catcher on the ground, you pick it up. The first thing you do is you check to see if it's ethereal. Is it ethereal? Yes, no. If it's ethereal, then you look and see how many sockets it has, and if it has 4 sockets, then you are now golden, and you have a 15% enhanced 4-socket ethereal man catcher, which could probably be sold for around a Burr rune if you're lucky. And this is because anybody who's making an Infinity, who's going to invest Burr Mal Burr Ist into a weapon, is probably going to also try to invest in a higher base. Now, does that 15% enhanced damage really give your mercenary that much more damage output? I mean, is it worth like a Burr rune or whatever to buy that base? I don't really think so. But if you find one and you want to sell one, who are you to complain what they're spending their money on? Who are you to complain about this? Don't complain about them spending their money. They are spending their money on you.
Good day.
Smile and nod. Let me see if I got any more items in here. So these are probably worth like at least an ist. 320s. So 320s tend to be valuable, especially early on in ladder. You can actually shop these, believe it or not, but it does take like a considerably large number of tries and hell difficulty. 1,000. There's 1,000 items I could talk about and why they're valuable and why they're not. And I don't like Greyford Wilted Armor. Is it valuable? No. Is it useful? Yes. It's very useful as a low-level life leech armor with resistances. Great for leveling up new characters. Lacerator, non-ethereal. Is it valuable? Not really. You could probably pick one up for like a co-rune or something, I guess. Non-ethereal versions tend to be relatively common. The ethereal versions, pretty rare and actually very valuable, especially if they roll with high enhanced damage. And a very good way to apply amplified damage to targets. Useful, but not particularly very valuable. Demon Machine, Chuko Nu. Useful? Yes. Very useful. Very good for the Enchant Sorks and Holy Fire, Strider Paladins, and various other characters that just like to have fun with exploding arrows and fire damage. Is it valuable? No. The reason why it's not valuable is because it generally tends to be in high supply, and the demand isn't as high as the supply. So there's a lot of these floating around. There's very little variables on them. I think there's like almost none. And you get one, and that's pretty much it. Like, you just move on. There's got to be something. Oh, here we go. Here's a nice little shield. So this is a Sacred Targe, all res 45. So, is this worth something? Yes, 100%. This is a pretty much standard value item. Easily, you're looking at like low rune for this. Because it is a 4-socket guaranteed at Larzik. It is 45 all res, which is perfect. It is a Sacred Targe, which is the elite base. When I talked about telling the difference between like normal, elite, and exceptional, the shield's got to be one of the easiest ones to tell. Elites all have like sacred in the name. Well, most of them do anyway. The exceptionals, most of them have the more like Akarin in the name, and then the baby ones don't have, they got like nothing in the name really. It's just like Targe instead of the regular. So it's like Targe, Akarin Targe, and then like Sacred Targe, right? You can still tell by other reasons, but this particular shield, definitely one of the better shields. If you found this early on in a ladder season, you could very easily get something for it. Early ladder season, you might have to compromise and just take whatever something can offer you in the highest runes that they have available. But later on, you're definitely looking at like low, if not even higher, maybe even Sir, honestly, Burr, depending on what you get on it. I mean, it's a very nice shield. 45 roll res is perfect. I could probably take a look at Tradery and do that. And speaking of like knowing the value of items, Tradery, I don't know if it's the best place to learn the value of items because Tradery seems to be all over the place and it's wonky sometimes. But let's take a look here. So let's pull up Sacred Targe. And let's see what the going price is for a 45 all res. So we're going to put in all resistances. And then we're going to type in minimum 45. Minimum 45, and then hit apply. And then we're not going to look at these down here because these are the ones for sale. What we're going to do is we're going to look over here for the recent trades. And as you can see, we have 1 jaw, 1 burr, 2 jaws, 2 jaw, 2 burr. We've got 2 burr or 2 jaw or 3 low, and so forth and so on. You can use this as a way to price check items, and you can see exactly how much the value of an item is. But do be aware that you might not always be able to get the current going rate for an item. Just because an item is worth, say, 2 burr, doesn't mean that you'll get 2 burr. Sometimes what I like to do is I just throw the item up, let people give me offers. A lot of times I get troll offers. But then somebody will come in with some crazy offer like 1 burr rune, 1 low rune, like 2 ohm runes, and a Zod. And I'll be like, sure, that sounds fair. And I'll kind of work it out in my head to make sure it's fair. But like even if it's not fair, like the sheer quantity of runes that they're offering me sometimes can be more valuable itself than just the jaw rune. Jaw runes and burr runes and things like that are nice, but they're often very difficult to break down if you don't actually need that rune itself, like trying to trade that rune for the lower runes. So sometimes when people will trade you like a handful, like literal handful of runes of change, like sometimes that can be more valuable than getting, you know, a little bit more value out of the item. I would highly recommend hopping on Tradery. Tradery is a really good place for trading. Like I said, sometimes the prices can be wonky. Make sure you have your platform checked, your mode checked, softcore, hardcore, and whether or not you are in ladder. At the beginning of a ladder season, it can be a little difficult because they don't clear out the old ladder sales. So you have to make sure that you pay attention to what day ladder starts and don't bid on any items that are older than the current ladder that you're in. Let's hop to some other characters here because I really want this to be a comprehensive video. And I know it's already an hour and 20 minutes, but yes. Yes. Let's take a look at yeah, Penance. Let's look at Penance. I believe Penance is my two-handed Zealer. Yes. So Penance is wearing some very interesting equipment. One of them is a Death Colossus sword, which is in a Ethereal Colossus sword base. Ethereal Colossus sword with 5 sockets can be mildly valuable. It's like around probably an ist. If you have like 15% enhanced and a bunch of other things on there, it could be more. My mercenary isn't wearing anything too crazy. It's got a grief on him, huh? He doesn't have a grief. I do believe he has some decent charms, if I remember correctly. That's an interesting one. So all res 15 is the highest you can get on a Grand Charm, and 45 life is the highest you can get on the Suffix. So I got a all res 14 with 21 life. Now it's not perfect on the all res; it's only 1 off, but it's not bad. The life could be a lot higher. But, I mean, that could probably still worth like an ist, if not higher, maybe Vex. The main problem with these, though, is that they take up the places of other, like, better charms that you could potentially put in your inventory, so they might not always be valuable. This one, on the other hand, not as valuable because 26% extra gold from monsters and all res isn't as valuable as life. I also have... That's an interesting one. Lightning damage and lightning res. There's a 3% faster on walk, 313. There's a 313.17. That's got a decent value. There's a nice one right there. Oh man, I'm surprised I didn't sell that. That's a 319, 7%. That's one off perfect, so it's almost a 327, which is a fine small charm. So 3 plus 3 max and 20 AR would be perfect. And then the good luck part, 7% magic find is perfect. So that is a actually pretty valuable item. Let's take a look on Trader Review and let's see what that could potentially be worth. I am curious. So first we're going to look up Small Charm. We're going to look up Better Chance of Magic items. I'm going to put in minimum 7%. And we're going to put in max damage. Minimum 3. Have any sold? So there's a 315.7 that sold for an ohm, a 315.7 that sold for a gull, a 327 that sold for 2 jaw, 2 burr, or 5 jaw. Well, I don't know. It doesn't say which one it was. I hate when they have the multiples on there, but it sold for something good. There's a 327 which sold for 5 burr runes. As you can see, when you have something that's really close to perfect like that, it can potentially be valuable. Perfect being even more so. Torches. I could do a whole thing on torches. Torches generally tend to be valued based on class before anything else. So Sorceress being the most valuable, Paladin being the second most valuable, and then I think Assassin the third, and then going down from there with like Druid and Barbarian all the way at the bottom, like Druid, Necromancer, Barbarian. Like nobody cares about them. You can pick up like almost like a 2020 Druid torch for next to nothing. Like you're like, you got a 2020 Druid torch? I'll give you like a Ohm rune for it. And I'll be like, sure. You have a 2020 Sork torch on the other hand, and you're gonna get like a magnitude of runes for it, and just ridiculous number of runes. We had one season, and I think we got like 40 jaw runes for that Sork torch. I think I have a clip of actually finding it. Let me see if I can pull it up for you. Yep, here it is. Perfect Sork torch drop.
Right in front of my face.
Holy Jesus, it's so loud.
Get smitten. Boom.
Yoink.
Beautiful. Yeah, we had no problems there.
Alright, and the torch is...
I'll take my source torch.
Holy Jesus.
Oh, a perfect sword torch? Holy fuck.
So as you can see, something like this, super valuable. And like I said, we ended up trading it for like 40 or 50. Again, it might have been 50 actually. I don't even remember. A lot of doojanks. That's what it was. A lot of doojanks. Overall, it really comes down to experience and knowledge of what is valuable and what is not, what is rare and what is not. I mean, if we were to write a formula that like a computer could follow for Diablo, it would probably look something like this. Like supply, low, mid, high, extremely high. And probably actually, we could put down here on the other end, rare. And then like extremely rare. And then we look at demand. So demand is very important because it doesn't matter how rare an item is. As an example, I can give you a super duper 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 ridiculously rare item. Like blah, 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 blah. Tyrael's Might, as an example. Tyrael's Might is an extremely rare item, but it is also not an item that is in very high demand. So when you think about an item that is extremely rare, just because it is extremely rare does not mean that it has a high demand, right? So the Tyraels has very low demand, so nobody really wants it. I mean, it has mild usefulness on mercenaries, and that's about it. So for demand, we have extremely high, which would match up with extremely rare. We have high, mid, low, and extremely low. And then I would even put here non-existent. And what this comes down to is that you would rate something on both of these scales. So the first thing is how rare is an item, right? So let's take the Sork Torch, which is a 20/20, versus a Druid Torch, which is a 20/20. Both the Druid Torch and the Sork Torch at 20/20 are extremely rare, right? They're both extremely rare. So why does the Sork Torch outpace the Druid Torch when they are both extremely rare? Well, the answer to this question lies in the demand. In this particular case, the Sork Torch is in extremely high demand, and the Druid Torch is in extremely low demand. And this really just has to do with the fact that the Druid is, unfortunately, one of the worst classes in Diablo 2. It's fun to play, and there are definitely good builds that you can have a good time with. And that is not to say that, like, I hate the class or anything. It definitely is one of the classes that I have the most trouble having fun on. But I have created some very fun builds, like the Hurricane Gilbert character. But the thing is that, like, when it comes to these situations, understanding the fact that just because an item is extremely rare does not make it valuable. You may also run into situations where the demand on an item may be very high, like, for instance, let's say, Ral Runes. So let's look at Ral Runes for a second, and let's say, okay, so how rare are they? Well, they're extremely common. They are extremely common. Ral Runes drop everywhere. You can pick them up off of everything. But what's the demand? The demand is extremely high because they get burned constantly for Khazra recipes, which makes Ral Runes extremely valuable. But because they have an extremely common drop rate, the extremely common drop rate offsets the extremely high demand, right? So this causes a problem. So how do you deal with this? Well, you basically deal with this by making Ral Runes less valuable, but still important, which essentially puts it somewhere around the level of an item that everybody wants, but nobody wants to pay very much for because they're very common. So like 40 Rals or like 20 to 40, it kind of varies every season, is equal to like an ist. Now the interesting thing about this is that you could potentially craft an item worth many Burr Rune with just one Ral, which is kind of the whole gamble of crafting, right? So essentially you're getting the Rals and you're crafting with them, and this allows you to have a chance at getting one of these god tier amulets. What would you potentially be trying to get? You would potentially be trying to get a +2 Sork 20% FCR, all res plus strength, most likely. And I can't remember what the other stat you would really want on there. But honestly, just that by itself, like just like 20. So I don't even know. It doesn't even have to be 20, but let's put 20 all res. All res 20, and like any plus strength, it doesn't even matter. Just that alone right there would be multiple burrs. And that's just one of the many crafts that you could make. You could make a 220 barb, you could make a 220 like freaking paladin. 220 paladin would be really valuable as well, because of the Hammerdins. The Hammerdins really like that +2 and the 20% faster cast. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I'm leaving out, and of course there's going to be stuff I'm leaving out. which is kind of why I'm going over the whole like demand and supply. The problem is that if you don't have a lot of experience in the game, you won't know, number one, how rare an item is. This is a lot of experience. Experience in knowing what is common and what is not. Like finding a +1 Grand Matron bow with 4 sockets is very common. Finding a 15% enhanced Grand Matron bow with 4 sockets is not common. That is extremely rare. And then finding it with +3 skills is even more not common. That is extremely, extremely rare. And that is where the value starts to come into play. The demand for items. The demand for items generally comes from the knowledge of... just fell out of my pocket. Generally comes from the knowledge of understanding how characters function. Right? So this is also experience-based. So the more you play the game and the more characters that you play, the more knowledge that you will have and the more understanding you will have of why a particular item is valuable, why somebody's interested in finding that item or paying money for it. Right? Like, take for instance Assassin Claws. Assassin Claws can be some of the most ridiculously valuable items in the game. And a lot of people just don't know. I could bet you real money, like 10,000 real dollars, I would bet you, that the majority of the people in the Diablo 2 community don't even know which claws are valuable, let alone to pick them up and check them. And this really just comes down to a lack of experience. A lot of people just have never played Assassins, and they don't know what makes a claw valuable at all. And I can kind of like vaguely go over this with you and try and explain it to you, but it really comes down to specific builds and specific use case scenarios of what you're looking for. Some of the more valuable claws in the game can be so valuable that they could literally buy you a car. That's how valuable claws can potentially be. And it has to do with skills. For instance, if you were to go to Anya and look for claws, you can shop at Anya. You can buy claws from her. She has claws in here all the time. And what you would be looking for specifically is a combination of effects. One of the more valuable claws is actually a claw that gives you +3 to lightning skill or trap skills in general. And then you also want +3 to lightning sentry specifically, as well as 40% increased attack speed. If you take that to Larzik, you get 2 sockets. Now you have a 2 lightning facet +6 lightning sentry claw, which gives you tremendous amount of damage. And they are extremely valuable. I'm pretty sure I could probably pull up an image of a +6 40% IAS trap claw to give you an idea of what they look like. So this is a Cunning Greater Talons of the Quickness. And as you can see, it is +3 traps, +3 lightning sentry, 40% IAS, which is what governs the trap laying speed, and +2 sockets, which we would, of course, put 2 lightning facets in. This item, extremely valuable. I can't even explain to you how valuable this item is. You find this item, it's like winning the lottery. Like, you've now won the lottery. You could actually probably sell that for real money and go fix your car or, like, remodel your house or something. Not even joking. And there are items like this all throughout the game that are just extremely valuable. Zinners was sending me some pictures of some of them, and they're really cool to look at. They're items that essentially just have extreme value because of how rare they are. And the combination of effects that go on them. You might notice that as I'm playing the game, I often pick up, like, pretty much every item I come across, rare items. I pick up, like, crystal swords and dimensional blades and, like, broadswords and stuff that you wouldn't even think to pick up. And the reason why I'm picking those items up is because those items have insanely high values. You just don't know they have insanely high values. And the problem with that is that you don't know because you don't have the experience that you need to be able to tell that. Let me see if I can find these images real quick. Wah, wah, wah. I've got so many of them lying around, but Zinner sent me some really good ones from the like the god tier levels. So here's a really good one right here. This is a Ghost Glaive. So this is something that you could potentially upgrade from as low as a regular glaive. So any rare item can be upgraded to the next tier. And you can make elite items out of these. This one in particular is a 30% increased attack speed, 411% enhanced damage, plus 1 min, 164 AR, and it replenishes quantity. You wouldn't even need the replenishes quantity now with the Barbarian, because the Barbarian can just like replenish the quantity on his own. But if you're playing like a Javazon or whatever, you would still want the replenishes quantity for the damage output. But an item like this, extremely valuable. These are items that I constantly hunt for. Let me give you another example. I know I have at least a couple more in here. So here's another one. This is one that originally started out as a crystal sword. Yeah, a crystal sword. What a lot of people just walk by the way. If you see a crystal sword and you upgrade it, it's ethereal, and you upgrade it to the phase blade, it now becomes an indestructible crystal sword, even though it's ethereal. This is the only way, by the way, that you can have an ethereal phase blade, is to have a ethereal crystal sword or ethereal dimensional blade and upgrade it into a phase blade. And as you can see, this one's 15% enhanced with 400 to 85% enhanced damage, 180 attack rating, dual leech. Pretty dang nice. It's 274 to 304 with one of the fastest attack speeds in the game. It's kind of a nutty, absolutely nutty phase blade. Here's another one right here. This is a Hydra Edge. Like, a lot of people will see me pick these up, like, one of the worst bases in the game, right? But, like, look at it. 215 to 540 damage. It's 100, I think 100 plus damage over a grief on the top end. It's 412% enhanced, 20% increased attack speed, and it has 234 AR. It's not bad. Now, that's what's rep durability on it. These rare items like this that actually do exist in Diablo are things that just generally tend to be overlooked by most players because they don't pick up the items and they don't identify them. I've had a couple close finds of my own. There's a couple items, like, for instance, I found this item. I thought it was kind of funny. It's not quite there, but it's 366% enhanced with 256 to 368. What is it missing? Well, it's missing, the repairs durability would be really nice, because that would save you from having to put a Zod in. 40 or 30% increased attack speed would be really good. Fool's mod would be really nice on there as well if it had rolled with the high attack rating bonus. There's a lot of potential ways that this one could have rolled a little bit better, but it's still a very good roll for what it is, which is why I kept it. You can also find some crazy items that just are nutty for leveling up your characters too, and I have a couple of them on, like, my alternative count. Some of these items, like the ones that I've been showing you with the mods on them, where they roll things like this, where they have, like, Cruels, Fools of the Quickness, Ethereal, replenishes, repairs quantity or repairs durability. Like, these items can be worth thousands of real dollars. And as you're running along in hell difficulty and you're killing things, and you see something as simple as, like, a crystal sword drop on you, and you don't even look at it. Like, those of us who know, who have the experience, to know, like, what is important, are going to pick up that crystal sword, and what's the first thing that we're going to check when we pick up the crystal sword? You don't even have to look at it, right? So you're running along, let's just pretend this is a crystal sword. You're running along, crystal sword drops. You pick it up, wave it in front of your character right here, right? I can see through it. It's ethereal. At this point, you know that this item is worth checking, right? So if it's not an ethereal crystal sword, well, then it's probably not worth checking. If it is an ethereal crystal sword, then it definitely is worth checking. At this point, you're going to get excited. Okay, you should be getting excited because you have something in your hands which could be that god tier item. You're going to identify it, and you're going to look for the telltale mods. You're going to look for Number one, is it, cool? Does it have the enhanced damage? Does it have the attack speed? Does it have the attack rating that it needs? Does it have repairs durability or replenishes quantity? In this particular case, with a crystal sword, this is supposed to be a crystal sword, you don't need repairs durability because when you upgrade the crystal sword into the phase blade, it is now indestructible. So you don't have to worry about that. So now you're just looking to see, does it have the cool, does it have the fools, does it have the increased attack speed? And of course there's other mods that you might want, like the leech or various other things. And these items do exist, but the thing is that a lot of people just don't check for them. They run along, they see an item fall on the ground, they're like, that's a crystal sword. There's no way that could be worth anything. Now, I originally got requested to make this video. Somebody asked me, they were like, how do you always know what to check and what not to check as you're running through the game? How do you know, like, which items to look at? You're like, hey, that could be really good. Or man, look at you ran over and you picked up this item and I never thought that would have been good in 1,000 years. And you're like, oh my God, look, I found like a diamond in the rough. Basically what he told me was he didn't think that the item I was picking up was even going to be worth anything at all. Right? And that's kind of the moral of this entire video, is that I'm trying to teach you how to tell the difference between something that is not worth something and something that is. And it really comes down to experience. The more experience and the more characters and the more builds and the more fun that you have with the game, the more you begin to understand why something is valuable and why somebody would pay so much money for it. Like, for instance, in Path of Exile 2, there's a character that builds damage based off of accuracy. And if you didn't know that there was a character that built damage based off of accuracy, then you wouldn't know that that particular item is going to be worth anything. So you might find an item that has high accuracy on it and not even know that you have a gold mine in your very hands. Speaking of gold mine, that's a really nice charm, 18 life, fire res of 10. It's not perfect or anything, but it's 2 off perfect on the life and it's 1 off perfect on the fire, but that's still worth easily like Vex maybe. And a lot of that happens in this game. Claws are a big one. Claws are a really big one. A lot of people just don't know about claws because they never play Assassin. If you've never played an Assassin and you've never messed around with claws, you don't know anything about claws. You don't know anything about the Mosaic claws. You don't know anything about the Trapper claws. You don't know anything about, like, the pre-buff claws and things like that have value. Like, a lot of people will look specifically for, like, a Shadow Disciplines with, like, +3 Shadow Disciplines and, like, +3 Fade or +3 Burst of Speed or something. Or +3 Venom. Specifically so they can have, like, a +12 like pre-buff set, which is insane. Like if you have +12 to Fade or +12 to Burst of Speed or +12 to Venom, it's kind of nutty to actually have like a pre-buff set like that just absolutely annihilates. Point savers are a big thing on claws. So a lot of people don't know about point savers. Point savers are huge. So if you find a claw and it has something like Dragonflight, look at how many points you got to go down to get to Dragonflight. You got to go 1, 2, 3, 4 points to get here, right? Well, if you can get Dragonflight for free, well, then you don't necessarily need to put 4 points in, right? So you can save those 4 points and you can get Dragonflight for free. Another one that people really like to have is Mind Blast, but Mind Blast requires 1, 2, 3 points to get down to, and a lot of the times people will grab that as a point saver as well. Shadow Master and Shadow Warrior can also be point savers if you have no intent of actually putting multiple points into them, and again also require 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 points to get to. So you can save 5 or 6 points, well, somewhere around there anyway, if you want to use some point savers in that direction. Death Sentry is also a very powerful ability, and it's something that a lot of the assassins like to use, even if they're not trap assassins, because it gives them the ability to add corpse explosion into their mates. Well, Death Sentry is also a very powerful point saver. So a very powerful point saver claw would probably be something like +3 Death Sentry, +2 or 3 Shadow Warrior or Shadow Master, and plus to Dragonflight. So finding a claw that has all 3 of those on it can be a payday for you. You can get a pretty good price for that, especially as like a mosaic claw or something. Speaking of claws, there's also a very powerful market in Blade Fury and Blade Sentinel trap claws. So these require ethereal weapons with high damage. That's the reason why I have this little thing in here, which is a Plague Claw Battle Cestus. It's not exactly the highest damage output. However, Blade Fury does not burn durability, so you don't need things like Repair's durability on them. So if you can find an exceptionally high damage ethereal claw that has like +3 to bad Blade Fury, and I can't remember what else, you can actually get some pretty insane damage out of a claw. I think it's like one of the highest damage claws in the game is a very, was it +5, I think? Yeah, I think it's +5 Blade Fury, high damage ethereal claw that you can essentially just use to fire off massive amounts of damage with your Blade Fury. It changed a bit ever since they added the synergies. It used to be like F-Death, but then it moved over to the ethereal god tier claws, which are like next to impossible to find. But if you do find one, money in the bank. I don't know, it's been a while since I took this girl out. Is she missing any equipment? Man, she slapped them. She slapped them boys now. She threw shurikens right in their neck, and they just like fell straight into the dirt. So here's a blue lion helm. What would you be looking for in a blue lion helm? The answer is you would be looking for, plus the skills, you would be looking for good modifiers that make it better than an Ariat's, which is going to be very hard. In most cases, when it comes to this particular item, it's just not going to happen. You would need like +2 Barbarian, +3 Battle Orders, +3 Shout, something along those lines. Maybe even like +3 to find item or something really to throw it in there, so sweetener, and then somebody might use it. Even then, if you're looking for that kind of helmet, like you generally want a blue one because you can get +6, whereas the rare ones you can only get +5. There are some halfway decent helmets you can find, but a lot of the times that when the helmet slots, Barbarians has a lot of helmets. They got a lot of hats. They got Ariats, they've got the IK helm, and they've got a lot of other good choices that they can potentially use as well. It's a Flesh Ripper. Not particularly high damage, though. Other items that have moderate value. So, like, as you're running along, you can always craft items. I usually pick up items for crafting. Like, for instance, this is a Vampire Fang belt that you can craft into a caster belt. Sometimes I'll pick up amulets when I'm inside of Terror Zones if they're high enough level for crafting into caster amulets. They're not necessarily valuable on their own per se, but they are items worth picking up just simply to craft with so that you can try and make something good for later. Shaft Stop. Shaft Stop is one of those items that it always has some mediocre value in its base form, but if you find an ethereal one with good enhanced defense and you upgrade it into its elite form, it actually has a pretty good value at that point. A nice ethereal Shaft Stop upgraded, socketed, and with the right runes in it can make a mercenary next to unkillable in the frickin' cow level, because they're mainly physical damage anyway. And yeah, absolutely excellent armor for. Usually, I put it on Lightning Fury Amazons, because if I want my mercenary to survive cows, he needs as much physical damage reduction as he can get. A very powerful armor for cow survival. Well, I've been talking for nearly 2 hours about this. I hope that I've given you at least some level of knowledge on the topic. How many of the, little questions that I asked did you get right? Were you able to figure out whether something was worth something before I told you the value of it, or were you wrong? I'll leave this one for you. This will be a one that I want you guys to answer. If you guys make it this long into the video, I want you to put down in the comments the answer to this question. It's going to be a really simple question. All right. What type of item is the most valuable in the game? Blue, white, rare, unique, set. Which one is the most valuable? Which category contains the most valuable item in the game? Is it A, white items? Is it B, blue items? That lined up nicely. Is it C, rare items? Is it D, unique items? Or is it E, set items? Now, I'm not going to give the answer during the video. I want to see what you guys think. I want to see where you guys' brains is sitting, whether you guys understand which items in the game can be actually the most valuable. And just put down in the comments which one you think it is. I'm very interested to see what everybody has to think, and how many of you guys are right. I'm also interested to know how many of you guys are right in this question. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals joining. I hope I have enlightened you at least a little bit. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe button if you enjoy the content. And I'm sorry I have been missing the past couple days. I've just been horribly sick. And as I say that, I cough as if on cue. On cue. As always, keep watching. Hello guys and gals, and welcome. Welcome. We're going to do another top 10 worst items today. I already have done the uniques, and I believe the rune words is already up. And today we're going to be doing the top 10 worst sets. Again, we're not going to be ranking these because they're all terrible, and we won't compare our turns. I don't care whether yours has corn or peanuts in it. It doesn't matter. They're all terrible, and they all deserve a spot on this list. To make things more dramatic, obviously the list available to you here, so you can't see it, and picking the characters one at a time. So let's just go down the list, and let's see what pops up first. So we've got... I got so many characters on this account, just all sorts of various things. And finding the first set on the list, we have Arcanas. Arcanas is the first set on the list that deserves a spot in the top 10 worst sets in the game. And it's really just due to the fact that Arcanas is just not really that great in terms of what it gives you as a character. Arcanas gives you a small amount of plus to skills, +2 once you have the full set on, for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces. It consumes your weapon slot and your shield slot at the same time, which is very unfortunate. It is only level 15, which at least there's something to be said there, so it's not like it's consuming your, say, spirit sword and spirit shield slot at that particular moment. But the amount of faster cast that it gives you isn't the most amazing, and there are better options for faster cast, especially if you have things like a Wall of the Eyeless, You can also get wands and things that have 20% faster cast on them directly. So you lose out on faster cast to get a little bit more plus to skills, I guess. But technically, you could be wearing a Saigon shield that's +1, and you could be wearing an orb that has +3 to the skill of your choice, which means you could technically be getting +4 to skills if you were using a shield and a orb at the same time. Which are pretty easy to come by level 15. In fact, you should have been picking up like every orb that you've come by at that point and putting them on. And as far as faster cast shield goes, I do believe Wall of the Eyeless is a little bit higher level than that, but it's not necessarily impossible to come by a decent amount of faster cast, like a plate. Early on, you can obviously wear stealth. You can also get faster cast rings, a faster cast amulet, and you can get faster cast in some various places. You might even be lucky enough to get a mage fists at that point. And so there's a lot of various options that you can go with where a two-handed staff that is consuming both your shield and your sword slot, or your wand slot, essentially, is not very good. Another big problem with the set is that, well, you don't get a lot of partial bonuses. So the +1 to skills and the 20% faster cast disappear if you're not wearing the entire set, which are kind of like the two best things on the set, is that it has +1 to skills and 20% faster cast. So if you're not wearing the entire set, you don't get those anymore. You do get a little bit of magic find on the amulet, and you get some mana and regeneration to mana. The raw amount of mana that you get is probably the best thing about this set. It's just the fact that it gives a raw amount of mana. It has, what, I have 200 mana right now, and if I put on the full set, you'll see that my mana goes up to 360, which is about 160 additional mana. The regeneration of mana isn't important. The raw mana is much more important because it actually helps the character regenerate. But for the most part, there's just so many better options that you could be potentially using with this set. The full set is relatively unused because nobody wants to wear the staff, because in general it just consumes too many of your slots and doesn't give you enough of a good bonus to wear the staff in the first place. The other pieces, like the armor, is usually replaced with stealth, which gives you faster cast rate. So even though the set itself gives you 20% faster cast rate, well, you lose the faster cast rate because you're not wearing stealth. So the gain is essentially a net, like, wash. The small bonuses that it does give that are useful for your character at this particular time period aren't really worth what you're losing in the grand scheme of things. And the 50% magic find can be gotten for just 2 pieces. So if you have just the helmet and the amulet on, you can get the 50% magic find and screw the rest of the set. Overall, Arcanas is just not really a good set, and it really comes down to the fact that most sorceresses just don't use staves. Ever since like the beginning of the game, staves were just never really the best item. Sorceresses would often use a Spectral Shard or a Wizard Spike, Wall of the Eyeless or Lidless, and then eventually, you know, Spirit came out, and Spirit was also very good. And then you had things like Death Fathom and all the other bases that you could potentially use. But staves just, or staves just never really caught on. And this is one of the reasons why the Arcana set is just not a good set. For the most part. It's definitely one of the worst sets in the game, and probably one of the least used sets in the game, I would imagine also. The only time I've ever used this set has been the Tukas, and that is literally it. So it deserves the spot, in my opinion, at the worst, one of the top 10 worst sets in the game. Moving on to the next set that I believe is one of the worst sets in the game. Let's go back through the list here, and we'll just pull out the list as they show up in the list. So we're not going to specifically pull any over others. There we go. There's another one of the worst ones. Now, some people will fight me on this one, and they did when I originally put it on the list. They feel like Villabrig is much better than I'm giving it credit for. And it even has been upgraded. It's been upgraded from its previous, powers to a much stronger item. It gives you like 170 lightning damage. It gives you +2 pally skills, attack rating, mana leech, life leech, cannot be frozen. Like, it's amazing for a level 17 set. The problem is that number one, getting the entire set is sometimes very difficult. Number 2, it has a weapon and it has a shield. This is a big detraction from the way that this set works. There are a lot better weapons and there are a lot better shields than Millibrega's shield and Millibrega's rod. Giggity. Millibrega's rod is not a particularly high damage weapon. And in fact, it tends to fall off relatively quickly in terms of damage output before you even finish normal difficulty. Like, I honestly don't even really think Millibrega's is good enough to really leave normal difficulty. Is it good enough for Act 2? Sure. Is it good enough for Act 3? Yeah, kinda. It starts to fall off at the end of Act 3, and eventually you realize that your damage output really isn't high enough, your resistances really aren't high enough, and you need to take off maybe like one piece to maybe put on a shield or something, right? Like maybe an Ancient's Pledge just to shore up your resistances. Or maybe just take off the weapon just so you can have slightly better damage. And this is where the problem of this set lies. The problem of the set is in that it no longer gives you good bonuses if you're not wearing the entire set. So if you take off even one piece, the set bonuses diminish to almost nothing. Now you've only got 200 attack rating, the lightning damage, and cannot be frozen. All of the green set bonuses are relatively minimal, and if you take off the shield as well, you even lose the cannot be frozen. Most of the bonuses, if not almost all of the bonuses, like the leeching, the +2 skills, come from the full set. So breaking up the set in any way, shape, or form ruins any of the bonuses that it gives you. And because this set includes a weapon and a shield, not just one or the other, but a weapon and a shield, which is probably one of the worst things that you can do in terms of sets, you're always going to end up replacing the weapon at some point for a higher damage variant, and you're always going to end up replacing the shield at some point for a better shield. Like if somebody comes around and drops a Haas in your lap, you're going to take off the Millibregas and put on the Haas, at which point the Millibregas is broken. If somebody offers you a Rhyme Shield with a 45 all-res base, which is definitely something that you could potentially use early on, the Millibrega's Shield is going to leave your hand. If somebody offers you a better weapon, like a Baronera Star, or something that just has higher physical damage in general, or maybe it attacks much faster, which is also an issue with the Millibrega's Rod. In general, like, it just ends up being a very poor set in terms of, like, scalability across multiple levels. It's useless, basically, anywhere except for normal difficulty, and just doesn't retain any of its real benefit once you start removing pieces. And this is why Millibregas has made it into one of the top 10 worst sets in the game. Now, moving on to the next set. Let's go down the list this time. Maybe we'll find something a little different. We'll do them in a different order, shall we? Boop, boop, boop. Alder sets. One of the worst sets in the game. We have a lot to talk about with Alder sets. It's shiny, though. It is shiny. Now, all of the class-based sets are special in some way, shape, or form. They're designed for use at higher levels, and they can potentially bring you through the game. Griswold's set is absolutely amazing and has multiple uses within the game. Tal Rasha's is one of the best sets in the game because it is useful even at endgame. Has high magic find, just a generally good item, like, overall. Even Mavina's can be very useful for an Amazon leveling up, and even at endgame you can clear everything. The problem with Alders is that it is none of those things. It has extremely low damage. It doesn't really offer you anything special that you couldn't get from elsewhere. And there are very few pieces of the set that are actually worth using. Let's start with Alder's Rhythm as the first option here. Alder's Rhythm's main problem is that it has no enhanced damage. Now, they did actually add enhanced damage to the set bonus, but the problem is that the enhanced damage does not actually affect the weapon directly. They should have added the enhanced damage to the weapon, not to the full set bonus. If this 350% enhanced damage right here, if this was on the weapon, this would be amazing. But since it's not on the weapon, this is off-weapon enhancement. And off-weapon enhancement, as we all know, is not as good as on-weapon enhancement in terms of enhancing the damage of a weapon. And so in general, this doesn't offer enough enhancement to actually be useful to the weapon. And the enhancement doesn't work if you take off one piece, which is another very big problem. So Alder's Rhythm, if you notice, has this like crazy set bonus, like +3 druid skills, 350% enhance, 150% in bonus to attack rating, 10% mana leech, 150 defense, 150 mana, all res 50, and a 50% better chance of magic items. But because it includes this poopy weapon, and you take off the weapon, notice now that the set bonus has diminished dramatically. Now it is no longer all these amazing things. Now it is just bonus attack rating and magic fire. On top of this, we also have the fact that the individual set bonuses aren't really that amazing either. So the green bonuses only give you things like dexterity or vitality or energy, or in the case of the weapon, strength. And these green bonuses are like, gotta be the most bland. Like, yeah, you get something out of it. I guess a little bit of dexterity isn't a bad thing. A little bit of, like, vitality isn't a bad thing, but couldn't they have come up with some better set bonuses than that? Like maybe some attack speed, or honestly taking that 350% enhanced damage and put it onto the weapon, which would drastically change, like, the quality of that weapon and make it somewhat worthwhile. Another problem with this is that most of the pieces of the set are pretty much garbage stat-wise. The weapon is basically trash. Like, it is probably one of the worst weapons I've ever seen. It has 5% mana leech and 10% life leech, which do relatively nothing because there's no damage on the weapon. It has 200% enhanced damage to demons, which does relatively nothing because there's no damage on the weapon. It has fire damage of a very low amount, and it has increased attack speed, which is somewhat useful. The only really good thing this weapon has is 3 sockets, so you can put something else in it. And I don't even know what the hell you would even put in this weapon. I've tried to make characters with this set, and it just doesn't work. The helmet has 2 sockets, and it doesn't really have anything good on it at all. Like, it's got 50% cold res, I guess, which could be mildly okay, and 25% faster hit recovery. It's got no increased attack speed. It's got no life. It's got no pretty much anything on it that really makes it worthwhile in any way, shape, or form. The armor has really bland stats. Again, just not really a good piece of equipment. Like, the bonuses that it has are relatively low. The stat bonuses are like okay at best, and just generally not a good item. The only item of the set that's any good whatsoever, and that people actually use on a regular basis, is the boots. That's it. The boots are relatively amazing, with 40% increased run walk, 50 life, fire resistance 50%, which happens to be very nice to cover that negative spot on the spirit, because spirit doesn't offer fire resistance, and even 10% damage taken goes to mana, which is absolutely insane for melee characters, especially early on, which completely solves all mana problems just in general. Alder's boots, however, does not carry the set. Like, if we're talking about the set as a whole and how good this set is and whether people actually use it on a regular basis, nobody uses it. I don't think I've seen anybody use Alder's set in forever, and even during, like, new games, nobody touches the dang thing. The boots are the only thing people use, for the most part, at all. And that's why Alder's set made it into the top 10 worst sets in the game. Moving on to the next set on the list. Let's go ahead and scroll down the list here. And Hawaiians actually did not make the list, believe it or not. It actually does have moderate uses. I've actually used Hawaiians on several cases. Several pieces of it actually do get used, including the belt that prevent monster heal. So it ends up being a fairly decent choice. Bullcathos also did not make the list because I've actually used it on several characters leveling up. Although I do think it needs work and it needs to be fixed a little bit, it definitely did not make the list. So many characters. Sparty. My Sparty. Animations. I wanted this to be dramatic to find the sets, but I also can't find the sets. Next on the list is Sivherbs. Sivherbs is not a good set. It is a set that has like one item that anybody uses at any particular time. And the only reason people use Sivherbs set is literally because they can upgrade Sivherbs Cudgel, or rather use it for a relatively long period of time for the maximum damage. The problem is that the set bonuses on this set are relatively poor. So you get a Cudgel, which does a decent amount of damage. And by the way, I don't really recommend using this Sivherbs Cudgel. My personal opinion, I think that Plague Laws works much better. If you're looking for a scaling weapon to like follow you through the levels, I think that not only is it, I think it's a lower level, but Plague Law's sword combined with Plague Law's shield is actually a better combination in general than Sivherbs. My personal opinion. Like, I don't usually use Sivherbs because Sivherbs has none of the good stats that Plague Laws has. And let me, just for, you know, like, poops and giggles here, let me pull up Sivherbs set real quick. And I'm going to show you what I mean. So if you've ever used Sivherbs to level up your character, and you're like, oh yeah, I would love to use Sivherbs to level up my character because it has that scaling damage. Well, why not use Plague Laws instead? First off, Plague Laws set has a 2-piece bonus of 50 defense, which isn't most amazing. But it does, however, have 50% Deadly Strike. It has the same scaling max damage that Sivherbs does. It also has a scaling attack rating as well, which is actually on the gloves, I believe. Let's see. This is it right here? Yeah, this is it. So we're going to pull this up and I'm going to show you that. So if you utilize 2 items, you get the scaling maximum damage on the weapon. It also comes with 30% bonus attack rating and 50% Deadly Strike, and it's only level 4. Sivherbs' weapon, on the other hand, is level 9, which means that you can't even use it at the same level. Plague Law's Shield is an easy option to put together with Plague Law's Tooth because it gives you the all resistances, the poison length reduction, and it's also only level 4. Plague Law's Pincers, on the other hand, has the scaling attack rating, but it also has knockback and slows target by, and the knockback might not necessarily be what you're looking for. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's a horrible option. You're getting a 990 attack rating increase, up to 990, a scaling maximum damage, and all resistances with poison length reduction by 75%, bonus attack rating, and Deadly Strike. Meanwhile, Sivherbs is offering you only damage, and that's it. No Deadly Strike. The Deadly Strike alone doubles your damage and puts you ahead of what Sivherbs Cudgel is offering. Then there's the set bonus. Like, the amulet is relatively poopy with just replenish life 4 and regenerate mana 40%. Could be somewhat useful to a character who's really mana dependent early on, but higher mana is actually almost always better than regeneration of mana. Then we have the shield, which is also really poopy with basically no good stats on it. And then the full set bonus doesn't even really offer anything super amazing. It's 25% bonus attack rating, which is okay. The Plague Laws has 30%, basically just on the weapon. Then you get 200% bonus damage to Undead, which is off-weapon enhancements, which is only really going to help you in Act 2. 50 defense, 15 strength, 25 lightning res, and 25 fire res. And that's about it. You get like a 26 poison res. So you get across the board, I think you end up with like 25 all res on the item, on the whole set. And then here's the biggest downside. It consumes both your weapon and your shield slot if you want to use the entire set, as well as your amulet slot, which are all very important. In general, like, nobody uses the full set. The only time you ever see anybody using this is just the weapon, and that's pretty much it. And even that is not really the best option for a low-level character. Plague Law's Sword and Shield outpaces Sivherbs by miles. It's lower level, it's easier to put on, and quite honestly, easier to obtain half the time as well, because I've got tons of freaking Plague Laws laying around all over the dang place. In general, Sivherbs just not a good set. It really needs to be adjusted. Given some like sort of special benefits specifically for like undead, it seems to be designed around that. Another little tiny tidbit of information is that Siverbs is actually David Brevik's name backwards. Brevic, Brevik. So he actually made this set for himself. So Brevik's set that was named after him is pretty poopy. It's pretty garbage. Moving on to the next set. Well, we have Orphan's Call. Now, you might be thinking immediately, as soon as I mentioned Orphan's Call, you might be thinking, well, Orphan's Call's not that bad. It's got the amazing helmet in it that everybody loves. Everybody loves this helmet, the G-Face. The G-Face is amazing. It is amazing, and it's one of the items that probably won't get tossed on the ground at the end of this conversation. But the thing is that G-Face is not enough to save this set. G-Face is a very good item, and we're not even going to talk about this item because this item is amazing. But the full set bonus for using Orphan's Call is really bad. It has 100 defense, 20 strength, 10 dex, 85 life, all res 15, attacker takes damage of 5, and 80% magic 5. The 2-piece and 3-piece bonuses, however, are absolutely trash. Look at the 2-piece bonuses on this stuff. Like, if I take off a piece of equipment, 35 life, attacker takes damage of 5. No green bonus. No green bonus. No green bonus. No green bonus. So, piecemealing this set makes it very, very difficult to get any kind of benefit out of it whatsoever. The shield is somewhat useful as a high blocking shield. It gets outpaced by Moser's Blessed Circle, which comes with 2 sockets and has more resistances. So if you're trying to use a high blocking shield, you can just upgrade Moser's instead of upgrading this, put 2 perfect diamonds in Moser's, and call it a day. The belt is a dual leech belt, but most people don't use their belt slot for leeching. They use it for increased attack speed, like Nosferatu's Coil, or the Magic Find belt, which I'm blanking on as Gold Wrap. And, you know, they use it for things like plus to skills, like Arachnid Smash, or they use it for, like, prevent monster heal, like Polanin's belt. And you generally don't use your belt slot for Mana Leech or Life Leech. You use a ring slot for that. In most cases, the belt's pretty much just garbage. The gloves are okay early on. They're not, like, the most amazing things in the world. I would much rather have a nice crafted pair of blood gloves with Crushing Blow. But they do have attack rating on them of plus 100 and can be mildly useful in the basic situations like as you're leveling up, but for the most part they're pretty much garbage, and after a certain level you never pick these up again and you never worry about them. The shield, like I said, is pretty much outpaced by like most other shield options, and again, it doesn't really get used by much of anyone. The G-Face is a really good item, and it does get used by a lot of people. The problem is that none of the other set pieces pair well with it. If I put the shield on, I get 35 life. Oh my god. If I put the gloves on, I get 35 life. If I put the belt on, I get 35 life. Even if I wear 2 pieces, I get a whole attacker takes damage of 5. Yay. Attacker takes damage of 5. That's, woo, baby. Oh, baby. All in all, the Orphan's Call set is one of the worst sets in the game. It has one standout piece of equipment, which is the G-Face, and for the most part, G-Face literally carries the entire set for the most part. Unfortunately for the list, and for the set itself, I had determined that a single item would not be able to carry a set to victory, or rather haul them out of the top 10 worst sets in the game. So while G-Face is an amazing piece of equipment, the set as a whole is garbage, and nobody uses Wyston's set, or rather Orphan's Call set, pretty much at all. Moving on to the next set in the list. We have... Gotta actually find them. Eisenhearts. Here we go. Beautiful Eisenharts. Eisenharts actually does look kind of cool on the actual panel. Like, hold on, let's go back and let's look at the character in the window. Look at him. He does look kind of cool. Like, you got to admit, he's got like the hoplite helmet. The shield's got a bull on it. Like, the sword doesn't look half bad. Like, he didn't got no pants on, but it is a breastplate after all. So, I mean, overall, like, the look of the set isn't absolutely terrible. But the set itself is terrible. As I've pointed out many, many times, if you have a weapon in a set, it automatically makes the set worse just simply because there's a weapon in it. Because if the weapon doesn't hold the muster, or if it's not the weapon that you want, or the actual weapon class type that you want, well then you can't wear it because, well, at that point, like, you don't use that weapon. Not only does Eisenhart have a weapon, it also has a shield. It's got both. It's got a weapon and a shield. Now, Eisenhart's isn't necessarily the worst set in the entire game, but it is worse than just about every other option that you can potentially use. Is it worse than Saigons? Yes. Is it worse than Arathas? Yes. Is it worse than Arctics? Yes. Is it worse than freaking, I'm trying to think of like another like low-level set. Is it worse than Cleglaws? Yes. It's literally worse than just about every single other set that you can put on. Another problem with Eisenharts is there's too many pieces, and they're in too many high-profile locations. So think about it like this. Gloves, boots, like rings, belt, amulet, these are all relatively innocuous locations, and you can utilize these in sets, and that's the reason why things like Angelic's rings and amulet is so good, or Iratha's helmet, gloves, boots, belt is really good, or if you're dealing with some of the Saigons pieces, if you do like piecemeal Saigons, you could do like gloves, helmet, or like gloves, boots, or something like that, or boots, helmet, and you can generally avoid the high-profile slots of the weapon, shield, and armor places, which give you a lot of your resistances, your damage, and like attack speed and like things like that, or a faster cast. So when it comes to Eisenhart, it's already consuming 3 of the most high-profile slots in the game. The benefits that you get from using it aren't really all that amazing. Like, it has half the attack rating of Asaurus, half the attack rating of Saigon, half the attack rating of Cleglaws. It has some attack speed on it, which is okay, and it has a little bit of life leech, but it has half the life leech of Saigons. It has less, I think it's half the attack speed of Saigons as well, because Saigons has 30% on the gloves, right, and this one is 20% on the weapon, which also is a negative too, because Saigons doesn't have a weapon, which is also better, obviously, in general. The damage on the sword is also very low as well, because it has no enhanced damage for some reason. I don't know why. The only thing that I've really ever used this for is I'll put like the 2-piece on a mercenary like this, like early on in the game. If I get an Eisenhart's breastplate and I get an Eisenhart's horn, I'll put this 2-piece on them like this, really early in the game, and I'm talking about like really early. Another problem with the Eisenhart's is its level. Like, it would be a much better set if it was a lower level set, like say level 3 or something, but it's level 8. Eisenhart's is level 6. Asaurus is level 3. Cleglaws is level 4. There are a ton of other sets in the game that outpace Eisenhart's by miles. And you wouldn't choose this over anything else. Iratha's can take you to hell difficulty. Like, you can wear quite a few of the sets, and although Saigons won't take you to hell difficulty, it definitely has good piecemeal bonuses, like the 10% life leech and the 30% increased attack speed, the scaling attack rating on the helmet. There's some very good, like, piecemeal options. What do you piecemeal when you have a weapon and a shield in the set? You can't piecemeal much of anything. The only thing you can do is wear the helmet and the armor is going to be consumed by something like Twitch Throw, or stealth armor, or, you know, like Skin of the Viper Magi or something. Like, you're going to put something better in that slot, or like Greyform Quilted armor than Eisenhart's breastplate. So there's no piecemealing the set. The weapon takes up the most important slot, which is how you dish out your damage. The shield takes up the most important spot, which is how you get your resistances. And the helmet is probably the only piece of the set that isn't necessarily taking up anything super important, but it also doesn't have any good stats on it. 6 dex and damage reduced by 2. It's got to be one of the most stupid sets in the game. Can you beat normal difficulty with this set? Yeah, you probably could. You'd struggle through. You could struggle through and beat normal difficulty with the set. Would you be better off with just about any other set? Probably. Yeah, you'd probably be better off with just about any other set other than this. The damage on the sword would fall off really quickly. Like once you left Act 2 normal, you would start to like really feel the fact that the damage on the sword is bad. The lack of resistances on the set would also come into play, and you would realize really quickly that having basically no resistances is pretty awful. Which is why Eisenhearts deserves the spot as on the top 10 worst sets in the game. Let's move on to the next set, and I'm trying to think if I have covered them all. Bum, bum. Go all the way down, and let's go back up again. So we're looking for, I believe, 2 sets. One is the Heaven's Brethren, which we have not covered yet. We also have not covered Sanders Folly, and Berserkers. There's one of the ones right there. So the Berserkers set. Berserker's Arsenal is a weird set. The damage on the Berserker's Hatchet is really low, and it gets a tiny bit of enhanced damage if you're wearing the full set. So one benefit of wearing the full set is that it does make the enhanced damage on the weapon slightly better. As you can see here, the enhanced damage on the weapon is currently 5 to 13 with no enhanced damage, and at 50% enhanced damage, our damage goes up quite considerably from 15 to 39 to 21 to 57 just by wearing one piece. The main issue comes into play is that, well, bonus attack rating is really not as useful as raw attack rating is, especially at early levels when you basically have no attack rating, which is kind of a big deal. Mana Leech is not really very useful on this because it doesn't really do very much damage, so you don't really get very much leech back. It does have a small amount of poison damage, which is really low for level 3. Even at level 3, that's really low. And it has 75% poison length reduction, which could come in handy when you're fighting Andariel. +1 skills on the armor is relatively useless because, well, barbarians don't really care about +1 skills on very much. For the most part, they're more about physical damage, attack rating, attack speed, all sorts of other various things which are going to help them. The defense is somewhat nice because it helps, you know, in that regard. And then it does have the attack rating on the helmet, the 2-piece bonus on the helmet. Actually, it's a 2-piece bonus on the helmet. The 2-piece bonus on the helmet is okay, but it consumes your armor and your helmet slot. You'd probably be better off using Saigons, but at level 3 you can't, so you can use Hasaris boots and belt, which also have attack rating, or Cleglaws gloves and weapon, which is going to be a hell of a better combination, because you're going to be bashing anyway, so it doesn't matter. You get knocked back one way or the other. Or you can use Cleglaw's sword and shield and avoid the knockback and still end up with higher damage as well as attack rating bonuses on the weapon. In general, like, it's just not a good set for a level 3 character. If I was making a barbarian, I would rather use Saigon set. I would rather use Hasaris' set, Cleglaw's set. There's other options too, like you could potentially be using, I think, like one of the other really good low-level sets. I mean, even the Infernal set might technically be better than this set. I'm not entirely sure. The attack rating based on character level is like one of the only redeeming characteristics of this set. Other than that, like, there's really not a lot going for this set. The damage is very poor on a character that needs damage. And I think that's the most important takeaway here, is that as a barbarian, leveling up as a low-level barbarian, one of the things that you need the most is damage. You have skills that multiply your physical damage. You have things like Bash and Double Swing. You got things like Frenzy and Whirlwind and all these other things that are coming into play, and they all increase your physical damage. You also have things like, you know, your Masteries, which all increase physical damage and allow you to do critical strikes. And the Berserker set just doesn't really have any real physical damage on it. It's a very low physical damage weapon for a time in your barbarian life where you need high physical damage. You would probably be better off, honestly, instead of using a Berserker's Axe, just grabbing a random weapon off the ground and throwing a bunch of chips or flawed gems in it and running that instead, because you're probably going to get a lot more damage out of it than you would a Berserker's Hatchet. On top of that, the overall stats on the items are just not the greatest either. In general, when it comes to this set, I don't even really recommend even picking up the pieces for the most part. Maybe if you had no other choice and you happen to find the splint mail and you happen to find the helmet and you didn't have any other options. So if you didn't have any other options and you had these two at your disposal, then you could potentially use these for the attack rating bonus at the very least. But the moment that you have any of the other options, like Osiris boots, Osiris belt, Saigon's boot, Saigon's helmet, or Saigon's helmet and Saigon's gloves, or Pleglaw's weapon and Pleglaw's gloves, there's just like so many different combinations of items that are better than Berserkers. And I definitely think it deserves a spot on the worst sets in the game. Another set that we need to go over is Sanders' set. Sanders' Folly, I believe is the name of this set. Sanders has got to be one of the weirdest sets. I think it was made for a melee necromancer. I think that was the goal. I think when somebody made Sanders' set, I think they were like, hey, let's make a set for a melee necromancer. And they're like, what? And they're like, yeah, melee necromancer, let's go. Okay. There are some moderate uses for some of the pieces of this set. Like Sanders' Riprap Boots can be useful for a melee character leveling up because of that 100 attack rating and 10 dexterity with 5 strength. So it's a pretty decent little 40% faster run walk item that has attack rating on it and a tiny bit of strength. So it's useful, but not really like endgame best in slot on any build or anything. Like as soon as you have better boots, you're generally going to be using those over Sanders. The helmet is kind of poopy. It has Magic Find on it. That's about it. And like not really the most amazing thing out there. The gloves have increased attack speed on them, and in a complete vacuum of increased attack speed options, Sanders' Taboo is halfway decent. But as soon as you get access to anything better, Magnuskin gloves, friggin' blood gloves, any plus 20% increased attack speed gloves have better stuff than this, Sanders' Taboo tends to be replaced relatively quickly. Sanders' Superstition has increased the cast rate on it, which is really nice. But it's also level 25, which pretty much just completely eliminates it from ever being used, because as soon as you have a spirit at level 24, one level prior to Sanders' Superstition, you will never touch this thing again. It has cold damage on it and mana leech, but no physical damage. I don't know why they put mana leech on an item that has no physical damage. It's really stupid because you need physical damage to actually leech. And then let's look at the set bonuses. So it has no green set bonuses. So you can't put on like 2 pieces and get a green set bonus. It doesn't have one. In fact, 2 pieces only nets you 50 defense, which is awful. 3 pieces nets you 75 attack rating, which is also pretty hard. And then finally, the full set bonus gives you +1 to all skills, 75 attack rating, 4% life leech. I don't know why it has life leech on it, because again, there's no physical damage on the wand, 50 defense, 50 mana, and 50% better chance of magic items. The Magic Find is really the only thing that's even like mildly worth anything, and you have to give up your weapon slot, your helmet slot, your boots, and your gloves, which is really weird. I don't know anybody that would ever use multiple pieces of this set, let alone even one piece of this set with any kind of seriousness. They are throwaway pieces that have a place in mid-game to put on as a placeholder until you find better items. but due to their high level, some of the items don't even work as placeholders. Sander's Superstition will never work as a good faster cast item because it's way too high level, and there's so many better options that are lower level than Sander's Superstition. The hat has Magic Find on it, but you could literally get better Magic Find by finding a socketed 3-socket helmet and putting perfect topazes in it, and just it's not a good option at all. The gloves and the boots are generally okay options for low-level melee characters, but in general, the gloves get replaced as soon as you have something better, and the boots get replaced as soon as you have something better. And that's pretty much how Sanders rolls out. Last on the list, I believe this is last on the list. We'll do a quick check just to make sure it actually is last on the list, is the Heavens set. Known as the Heavens Brethren set. Actually, this is not the last one on the list. We got one more. We got one more after this. Heavens Brethren set is one of those weird sets that, like, again, has a weapon and a shield. You're noticing a theme here. Like, most of the worst sets in the game usually include a weapon and a shield. And that is just how it seems to work. If the weapon and the shield are not up to muster, if they don't actually, like, fulfill their purpose, which your weapon is primarily used as either A, a way to increase your spell damage, or B, a way to increase your physical damage, right? Well, Dangoon's teaching, the mace, doesn't really have good physical enhancement. In fact, it has no physical enhancement. But it does have scaling maximum damage based on character level, which gives it at least some damage as opposed to no damage. However, it also separates out the min and the max rather tremendously and makes the overall attack damage on the weapon very low. When you're level 4 and you're using a Clegglaw's sword that has increased maximum damage, it's fine because you're level 4. When you're level 68 and you're using increased maximum damage as your main form of increasing the damage on your weapon, that's not good. That's not a good thing in any way, shape, or form. So the damage on the weapon is severely lacking. It does have some interesting things, like 10% chance to cast level 3 Frost Nova on striking, which is nice for defensive purpose. It has increased attack speed, and it has a tiny bit of fire damage, but overall the weapon really fails. The armor has nothing on it that is even, like, remotely worthwhile. Maybe the 75 to life. It's got a bunch of defense on it that nobody cares about. It doesn't even have particularly high defense at 702. It has no enhanced defense, which also makes it relatively low in terms of defensiveness. Like, I've seen armors as high as like 3,000 defense, and this armor has 702. Woo! The shield also, likewise, doesn't really have a lot of really good mods on it. It does have faster blocking and increased chance of blocking with a little bit of mana. It's also indestructible for some odd reason. And it has 30% lightning res. The helmet, which for some reason within the Discord has been dubbed the Burger King crown, doesn't have any real good stats on it either. It's halfway decent on, like, a mercenary early on if you have no other option, but as soon as you have a better option, you just take it off and don't use it ever again. It's a spired helm, so it has relatively high strength requirement, but it does come with negative requirements to kind of, like, offset that. The